with all the police trucks outside and the cameras everywhere, Griffin?
I'm not supposed to tell.
Something happening?
Don't brat me out.
I won't.
You know the podcast? Blank Check, that fucking mess that goes on for like 3 hours and half the time they're not even talking about the movie? Well, Warner Brothers heard that if they put a new release in theaters from a director they've covered previously, they have to talk about it. And more listeners will tune in because it's a new release film. And so maybe they'll actually stay on topic for the majority of the time and create a clean entry point episode. It's a trap. They're watching the clocks. They're checking all the bits. There's no way for them to fuck this up. It's kind of dope, right?
The whole podcast is a trap.
This whole podcast is a trap. I will say this. Anytime we have to talk about a new M. Night Shyamalan movie, it does feel like a trap of our own making.
Why?
Because
I look forward to it.
I look forward to it. It does feel like he is the guy who most consistently makes our corner of the internet lose their mind in both directions. And that's part of the fun of it. For me.
For me.
But it's funny for how much he has become a like, I know exactly what I make. Here's what I deliver. I want audience to have thrills and chills and fun. He feels like a guy where every time there's a new movie, there's like an insane bruise being poked of people arguing on both sides.
It does feel like every time there's, oh, people are going to be like this about it. And then some people are like this, quote unquote, about it. And everyone's like, see, here they go saying it's bad. They don't understand. Like, and then there's just automatic hackles raised.
Look, there's a lot to talk about. There's always a lot to talk about with M. Night. More than ever now that you've spent about half a year really thinking about him.
We're going to talk about it.
We're going to talk about it.
On what?
Blank Check with Griffin and David. It's a trap about filmography.
It's a trap.
Directors who have massive success early on in their careers, like, say, their third movie is The Sixth Sense.
True.
One of the highest grossing films of all time. Third theatrically.
Having now
released.
spoken to M. Night Shyamalan about Praying with Anger, which he has lovingly restored and is getting ready to show to his children.
I was about to ask, is there going to be a fucking hard physical?
I asked him, and he was kind of like, I don't know, man. Like, I think even he's like, does anyone really want to see that? He's like, I have cleaned it up so my kids can watch it. I'm embarrassed to show it to them, but look, I have so many tidbits, guys.
Here's my take. Because he's also saying, like, I'm trying to restore, like, The Visit and shit.
Yeah, right.
He should get Praying with Anger as a special feature.
Sure.
On a 4K release of one of his other films.
Well, you know how, like, his old DVDs, maybe you don't know this or don't remember this,
the
but
Vista series? You're talking about the Vista series?
I don't know. I don't know what that is.
You might be talking about the Vista series. It was Touchstone's answer to the Criterion Collection.
I'm not talking about. I'm saying on his old TVs, he would put a short film he'd made as a teenager as a DVD extra, like as a little joke.
I remember that vividly on the Vista series releases.
So it could be kind of like an elaborate version of that. Right.
And there's a lot of that on, like, Criterion, say. A thing that people would react to very normally if any M. Night Shyamalan film.
I posed this question to Twitter once where I was like, not counting the previous Michael Bay editions, who will get the first current day Criterion release, Michael Bay or M. Night Shyamalan?
M. Night Shyamalan.
I think it's Shyamalan for sure.
I think it's Shyamalan.
I see a Village.
Yeah.
I mean, Shyamalan makes more sense in
the one that would make sense.
But he also has a lot of control over a lot of his stuff. Maybe not The Village, but like so he could easily license it. But I don't know if he wants to.
I don't know.
Idea.
I think he'd want to.
Why is Timothy Rose not in this movie?
We'll get into it. The early success, like The Sixth Sense, was given a series of blank checks, make whatever crazy passion products they want, and sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce baby, and sometimes you decide that you become the bank. And you issue your own checks.
True.
And bet the fucking house on the movie every time. Was talking about this with Ben last night. Producer Ben.
Where were you guys last night?
We went to go see Trap.
Oh, you went to see it
My
second time? Sure.
Ben's first.
Oh, Ben hadn't seen it.
Ben hadn't seen it. It was a bit of a trap to get him to see it. It wasn't. He suggested.
Yeah.
But this was the first director we properly covered on this show.
That is absolutely true. Our first real blank check miniseries was on the films of M. Night Shyamalan.
This is now.
They went up to The Visit. He's made 5 films since this movie
is what we were
series began.
Saying. The only guy
2016
who stayed kind of pace with him in terms of directors we've covered putting out films on a regular basis is Steven Spielberg.
Steven Spielberg and Shyamalan told me about the time they hung out when I interviewed.
We're getting into
Oh my God, we're going to get so many tidbits. So many tidbits.
But when we did that fucking series, neither you or I had seen The Visit. And people had said The Visit was good. And you and I were both a little side-eye about it.
We were absolutely approaching that series from the sort of like, wow, the boom and bust. Like, and I get, and then, I guess he made a little horror movie. That's nice for him. But
closed.
Right. But
even if he made a nice little low-budget found footage horror movie, he's not really going to be back. And then you and I both watched it where you're like, this thing rules?
Yeah, good.
And then he's had this insane third act of his career.
I put it to him as a third act and he agreed.
And I don't think it's the final act.
No, I just said I think your career has 3 phases. And before I even started explaining, he was like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Which has been fascinating for us to cover.
Mm-hmm.
Here's some questions I've thought of in relation to this. Now that this is a 5-film, 6 if we count The Visit, I would put this Visit into this third act.
Of course.
Right?
The Visit is the start.
Yeah. Has any director in history ever consciously, strategically chosen to go from highbrow to lowbrow in the way that he has?
I mean, I'm sure, yes, right? Like directors who were kind of prestige golden agey or silver, like guys who then went into genre stuff later in their career. I don't know.
Strategic is what
I don't know. I'm not, I don't, maybe not.
Because what makes him so fascinating to me in this act now that it is a proper act and has had its own sort of arc within it.
I mean, there's no perfect analog for what he's doing because the money part of what he's doing is specific.
He is one of one.
But he's getting more and more Carpenter references. People keep comparing him to Carpenter.
Ben and I were talking about this yesterday.
Not in terms of their approach to storytelling or whatever, but just kind of their consistency in the kinds of things they want to make and how, they're, craft, but always in genre. And, I don't know. There's a lot of Carpenter comparisons that are, people are going to get so mad that I even said that. So I'm tripping over myself.
It's a trap.
Because everyone gets so weird about M. Night Shyamalan.
They do.
They do.
And
Marie.
Marie, Barty Party.
Oh, wait. Have we introduced ourselves?
Salinas. Party Salinas. I'm Griffin Newman.
I'm David Sims.
The intro was a little abstract.
Yeah,
Look, it's a throwback to the first episode, Playing with Anger Wide Awake, where we didn't know what the fuck we were doing. No, we're usually tight as a drum.
Come on.
Hi, this is my voice. I'm Ben Hoffman.
I said producer Ben. I didn't list all the nicknames, but they do call him the Butcher.
Oh.
Because you'd be chopping it up.
No, but I think Butcher implies a poor editing job. Right? He butchered it.
No, I'm saying chopping it up conversationally.
Yeah, I chop it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I be chopping.
Right.
You be chopping.
On the editing side, I think he's more of a surgeon. He goes in with a scalpel.
Who else is here?
Lady Raven.
I said Marie. This is actually getting really bad. It's now becoming a problem how bad this
it's not great.
started.
No, my name is David Sims. This is Marie Barty.
Marie's
That's
here.
Griffin Newman. This is Ben Hosley.
This is Trapcast, a podcast about Trap, a totally normal movie that we all liked a lot.
We're here to talk about M. Night Shyamalan's new film, Trap.
Yeah.
I am a writer for The Atlantic, and I wrote a feature about M. Night Shyamalan related to this movie, which is why I keep talking about tidbits.
This was your first,
and that's all the context.
Major feature profile of someone.
It was my first print feature. I've written print stories before, but print feature.
But you were talking to him
and takes forever.
How many months?
We're here to discuss Trap. Yeah, we've set everything up.
We said everything.
Pod Night Shamacast.
Yeah, fun. Remember that? Remember when we used to think, the format will always be put podcast into the director's name.
What would the new what would it be like?
Pavid Cash
podcast in the water.
Well,
podcast. Knock at the podcast. What would if we were gonna make the miniseries title one of his movies?
Yeah,
podcasting with anger. Never.
No, I think you're right that it would be podcast in the water.
It's a little boring, so I'm glad we're still at Pod Night Shamacast.
Funny.
I would say that my editor Laura Bennett, my print editor, called me last summer. So a full year ago.
Yeah.
And said, what do you think about M. Night Shyamalan profile pegged to the next movie he's doing?
Mm-hmm.
So that is how long this has been in sort of quote unquote in the works.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yes. And here's what I would want to do. And she was like, great. And then she went to his people. And then it's It's the opposite. Like it's the most complicated version of talking to someone.
Sure.
That exists in my biz, I feel like.
But when did you first meet him? March or April?
Let's find out. I'll look at my calendar. I think it was April. And so, so I hung out with him. The first call with his people was in March, and then I hung out with him in April and May. And then I talked to a bunch of other people related to him and related to this movie. And then, so it was, and I saw the movie fully done, like in late July, and he was there, and we hung out. And then he was going to get dinner with Josh, and I wanted to come, but I couldn't invite myself.
People kept asking, knowing that you were working on this thing, has David seen the movie yet? And I just kept saying, like, he's still not done with it.
Yeah, I saw an unfinished version first at his. The whole thing is that I went to his compound. This was my whole when Laura was like, "Do you want to do M. Night Shyamalan?" I was like, one, I've talked and thought about M. Night Shyamalan a fair amount, so sure. Two, I am fascinated, as are we all, by his Pennsylvania compound. Right, his. I don't live in Hollywood and I don't shoot movies in Los Angeles. I do it all from home in Pennsylvania with my kids near me. And
although this movie was shot in Toronto,
yes, it
Dublin
was, which
for Philly, but we'll talk about that.
But like his Pennsylvania operation, and I was like, I've nothing else. I want to go there, so I drove over to Ravenwood. It is beautiful. For a couple days with Night, and I will talk to you guys about how that went. But we're also going to talk about Trap.
Also, that this Pennsylvania compound is his capital for his movies.
In that yes, at least for the visit and stuff. And at least
I think
initially.
he has to mortgage the house anymore.
Well, okay, but there was a poetic beauty to it.
Yeah.
Now I think he's made enough off of this run of the 6 third act movies that he has more money to play with. But at that point in time, it was like
for something like The Visit, where it was he made that movie with essentially by mortgaging his property for a few $1 million, and then showed it to I think every single studio, and they all said no until Universal came back around because Blum was interested. And like that was late, but like that's how tenuous it got for him. What has it been?
I'm looking at this Architectural Digest piece about his house.
Yes.
Looks fucking nice.
So
nice.
Damn.
M. Night Shyamalan's Trap. I drove there. We will talk about the movie soon, but I guess I'm in this now.
Yeah.
People want to hear this.
Yeah, I drove over to, it's in the main line. It's where Marie grew up ish, right?
Ish. I mean,
Chester County, I believe it's called.
No, Montgomery County, but like.
Well, that's where you grew up.
That's where I grew up.
This is where he is.
Yeah, he's more out by like horse country. Like he's by Foxcatcher, whereas I was not.
He is like next door to the Foxcatcher Ranch, which he told me about.
And he lives
as a big inspiration for The Village.
How close does he live to The Village?
Like the village where they shot The Village?
No, the village where the people live, as if it is still.
It's
in
his backyard.
Yeah, they are still there.
It's part of the compound.
Yeah. Hurt's not dead. He's just in the village. And so, I drive out there. I remember I got there and I park and someone comes out and is like, "Are you here to talk tonight?" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "I'm his driver." And I was like, "Oh, what's that like?" He's like, "Been doing it for years. I love it. Great guy."
And he was like, "Psst, can I tell you a secret?
Hey, this whole thing's a trap for you.
This guy makes movies." Have you heard about M. Night Shyamalan?
And so he has these giant ranch offices that are gorgeous, where all the editing and post-production and, other stuff happens. And I'm there. And then his assistant like runs up to me and she's like, Knight is at his house right now. So we're just going to go there. And so she drives me across the estate to his gigantic mansion, which is what Ben was looking at. Sort of, it looks like an Oxford University building, like, or what? It's like a very nice old style kind of.
Very grandiose.
And then I'm whisked into the basement where he has a gigantic movie theater with these like big shirtless statues, or the columns holding up the ceiling. Not of him. He said it was Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast was the inspiration for the design. Very kind of like fun gothic, vibes. And he is with Ishana, his daughter, mixing The Watchers.
Sure.
Watchers. Yeah. The Watcher is the one with Keanu Reeves.
Yes.
Watch out for that guy.
He's got a
piano wire.
Piano wire?
Yeah.
Okay. I just remember the hands with the
piano wire.
Some sort of string. Yeah.
And so my introduction to him was just they were just like, sit down. He's working. And it's like him and Deshana mixing a movie, which is, have you ever seen anyone mix a movie, Griff? You might have. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Because it's literally like, okay, go to 36, and then they like go to a time code, and then it's just like a monster hand grasping a tree branch, and they're like, can it be like crunchier?
Right.
Like, can we bring up the like they're talking about it in such hilarious detail.
It is so granular, and if you're just there visiting, it's so bizarre.
The visit.
It's so bizarre to enter into that stream where it's like all of this has almost become disassociative for them.
Right. They're not thinking about it's tiny little pieces now.
Right.
Yes.
And you're just like, I don't understand what I'm looking at. And you're replaying it back like 60 times with the most minor variations.
Yes.
Yeah. It's an interesting
cool.
experience.
And I've had
editors, I also feel like are very cool in temperament.
The whole team's there, and they were all cool. They like the podcast. I got so much. Hey, I know who you are. Like from,
don't let him no.
Like not from Knight, from other guy. From his team.
Knight's
like
more of a Chapo guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. God, he loves.
Ben just gave me a look to end all looks.
No, he probably just loves Locked On Sixers podcast, like just sports podcast.
And Stavi, baby.
I've had I've had directors before Night tell me like that the sound mixing is like to them like the most fun part in a way, which I kind of get.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
Anyway, so then I hung out with them. The hanging out with him is just hanging out with him. I mean, his office is gorgeous. He's got this gigantic, cathedral-sized room. Posters on the wall. All his scripts. Did I tell you this, Griff? All his scripts for every movie.
You sent me a picture.
All right, and bound leather volumes of every draft.
Yeah. Whoa.
And so you have.
That's crazy.
Like the Sixth Sense he showed me. There's like 14 draft. I'm approximating the numbers, but like it's a bunch because he was like that movie took a while.
Yeah.
Because it kept changing, and the twist doesn't come until a few drafts in or whatever. Right. And then
what do you mean the twist doesn't come until a few drafts?
He didn't have the twist initially. Like it was a ghost story. Like, yeah.
Which is the secret to why the Sixth Sense is a masterpiece.
Because if it was just built around the twist, it would feel like it would fall apart quicker. I feel like on rewatch.
Right. It worked so well as like a human character.
And
drama.
obviously the Nate Bargatze joke about how it made sense to audiences that his wife is just mad at him and giving him the silent treatment for a year. You're like, yeah, it basically does.
I mean, that's the real masterstroke of the movie.
Whereas other things like Signs, like movies where he was like, it was really easy to write that movie. You would see there were only like 5 drafts or whatever. And there's Labor of Love and Black Sheep, his 2 unmade films.
Labor of Love is the one that Bruce was going to do with him?
Yes. The one that has had various like almost getting off the ground moments and then, didn't happen.
And that one's more of a drama without supernatural elements?
It's like a drama about a guy who lost his wife and is maybe like walking across the country.
It always sounded to me when it was described like him trying to circle back to a Praying with Anger type thing.
I think from what I understood, he wrote it very early. And it's like the Sixth Sense is him being like, well, genre is an interesting way for me to express things.
Yes.
But before that, he was more doing family stuff and more like straightforward, treacly kind of drama stuff.
Well, and the other thing we talked about when we did our Sixth Sense episode fucking 8 years ago is that he went into the Sixth Sense being like, I need to write a script that is undeniable. Like he was like, I've had 2 at-bats that didn't totally connect in the way I wanted to. One was sort of a trial movie. One got fucked by Miramax.
Yeah.
What is a thing that like the script is so good that they'll let me direct it and they won't fight me on it because this script is the asset. I control the power by having it.
A few things he told me about that. One, his kid had just been born, his first kid, Salika Knight Shyamalan. I don't think she had the night when she was a baby.
Yeah, she took that on.
Salika,
Lady Raven.
Lady Raven,
is, of course, Lady Raven in the film Trap 2024, a Warner Brothers picture.
Yes.
A Blinding Edge production. So his daughter had just been born, so he said that he would have to like switch from like the baby to like, okay, I have an hour to write, like focus. The focus was very important for him. But yes, obviously his whole thing with The Sixth Sense was, I want to direct this and have final cut.
Right.
So I will make it for a small budget. And then there is an insane bidding war.
Yes.
And Disney is like, well, now Bruce Willis wants to be in your movie, which will take the budget beyond final cut territory. And he said like that was his big gamble.
But
then he said Bruce protected him basically.
Right.
But he was kind of like they were like, look, Bruce wants to be in your movie. Good news. Right. Now your movie can be made for a lot of money.
Higher price.
Bad news. Your contract says, it's under 10 million is when you get final cut. Over, you don't get it anymore.
But there's also the insane kind of luck and happenstance in that Bruce Willis had walked off the Lee Grant movie. Right. There's the movie about a sports agent that he was supposed to make with Lee Grant. I forget who the female lead was.
Okay.
And he walked off like a week into filming.
Broadway Brawler.
Thank you.
Maura Tierney was going to be in it. Might have been good.
It sounds kind of rad.
Yeah.
But he walked off and Disney sued him.
Yeah.
And part of the settlement was that he owed them 2 movies.
3 movies.
3.
Armageddon, The Sixth Sense, and of course, Disney's The Kid.
So
that's the one where you kind of feel like he's like, all right, you need one more. What shit you got?
Yes.
We got a movie called The Kid. Sounds good.
But that's the thing. It was like he was going to get paid his full fee, but he owed them 3.
Yes.
And so they're going to him and saying, here's what we have.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think?
Like that script might have never crossed his eyes had he not been stuck in a deal like that, because they would have been looking for a less expensive star, a lower budget production.
100%.
And suddenly it's like, anything you want to do, we have to cash these in.
And obviously changes his life.
Changes everyone's life. Connected to that movie?
Willis, you're right. Colette, obviously Haley Joel Osment, The City of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Donnie Wahlberg.
Yes.
Us.
It does? I mean, honestly.
For sure.
Yeah.
Box Office Game was born that day when we did The Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then, look, we know that, listen to Blank Check. You know the highs and lows of his life.
Right.
But what are some interesting, Unbreakable, very hard for him to make.
Yes.
He says you can tell in the movie just how tortured I am and how difficult, I felt, whatever.
And it's the pressure. Oz Perkins was on Big Picture recently.
I listened.
And he talked about, he and Jordan Peele are friends.
Yes.
And they read each other's scripts. And Jordan Peele
was in Nope.
Yes. Jordan Peele sent him the Nope script. And he was like, this is incredible. I can't believe they're letting you make this. I have to fight to get $500,000 to make my things.
Right.
And Jordan Peele's response was, yeah, but the difference is every movie I make now needs to be the best movie ever made.
Right.
And he said this not with a sense of self-importance, but a sense of burden that is very similar to where M. Night was, starting with Unbreakable, 100%. Where it's like, the expectations are so high on me now. And that is a movie that I think is him wrestling with those expectations.
Movie. I mean, he claims to me, obviously, no, I mean, we went right into, because obviously the movie's made so quickly after Sixth Sense.
It comes out 14 months later.
But,
yeah,
he says, difficult birthing. The signs, he says, the happiest, most fun he's ever had making a movie.
Makes sense to me.
The Village,
I mean, it was at his house.
I love The Village. I told him over and over again, it's my favorite of his movies, which he was like, sure. But directors are always just kind of like, okay.
With Joaquin?
No, I didn't talk to him about Joaquin. I mean, should I have?
Maybe.
No.
It would have been funny if I was like, The Village. Joaquin and Adrian Brody, pains in the ass?
Yeah.
But he worked with Joaquin twice.
Right. That's what, Because
my guess is they vibed.
We were just talking about this before we started recording
Joaquin
the episode.
is a particular, slice of boar's head.
Sure.
And those things are getting recalled from supermarkets right now. But
he's a mercurial.
Night has this very dreamy, if it feels right, it's right vibe to everything.
Yes.
He kept telling me, and it's not really hard to, it's easy to believe that.
Yes.
Something like Lady in the Water, you're like, which is where my editor was like, dig into this, call Nina Jacobson, which I did, which was fun. Yeah. I sent the email to Nina Jacobson, who was head of Disney at the time, right? Who was the person who said, I don't get this script. And he tearfully was like, then you don't believe in me. And then takes that movie to Universal.
Warner Brothers. That was Warner
Brothers. Is it Warner Brothers?
It is. And then he didn't work with them again until this one.
But he takes it away from Disney.
Yes. I mean, the story is
the end of his relationship.
He sent her the script and was like, you need to read this right now. And she's like, I'm at my child's birthday party. Or maybe a child's birthday party.
The big story is their meeting, which is in the hagiographical book written about him. What's it called?
The Man Who Heard Voices.
Man Who Heard Voices.
Yeah.
Where he's crying.
Yes.
And she's like, I'll make the movie, but you need to explain it to me. I'm not even saying no. I just don't really know what's going on here.
And his response is basically I need you to tell me you're proud of me.
Right. You don't believe in me. And I email her because obviously now she's just this big shot who does the Hunger Games. But right. She's just, she does her own thing.
Yes.
And I was like, she's not going to email me back because I'm kind of emailing her being like, do you want to talk shit about M. Night Shyamalan?
Sure.
And she emails me back immediately, and I just get on the phone with her, and she's like, "Look, we're number one, we figured it out. We're fine now, right?
Sure.
Which is nice. Hollywood, yeah, exactly." But yeah, I didn't get it. And I was like, did you see the movie? And she's like, yeah, it was the script. It was the thing I didn't get. Like all of my problems were there. Yeah. Like it was not like that movie got changed in any way.
But talk about a movie that is just him following what feels right to him.
100%. And did you see The Watchers?
I didn't, sadly. It was during a busy couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah.
And I was traveling, and it did not have a very long theatrical run, and I was meaning to rent it before this, and I instead saw Trap a second time.
Well, that's fine. I mean, did anyone see The Watchers? It kind of came and went. I really liked it. I'm the only person who liked it.
I did not know what it was about, which I guess is a spoiler.
Yes, maybe don't say.
I won't say, but
you
once
mean like what it's revealed to be
correct.
about.
But once I found that out, I was way more interested in seeing the movie.
It feels like a movie made by someone for whom Lady in the Water was a bedtime story. Is what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like it's the truest example of his Nepo baby children now creating works. They're adults to make it, and you're like, I can feel the M. Night Shyamalan you new baby. You're not just making a routine thing.
Let's dig into the heart of this, right? So much of the press around the Shyamalan family.
It's not hard for this to be the angle, obviously, because so many of his movies are about family and all that.
But let's even back up from this. The like Shyamalan family industrial complex, right?
The growing Shyamalan family industrial complex.
This like, this summer is Warner Brothers releasing a movie by his daughter and a movie made by him starring his daughter as the biggest pop star in the world with songs she wrote. Right.
He has 3 children.
Right.
I'm so impressed that she wrote all of those songs.
Yeah.
She's like a real musician.
The whole genesis of the movie is, I think, him being like, should we do a movie where you do music and I do a movie, and we like figure out what's a movie that could have your music in it?
I will say, like, it is not my type of music. It falls into the like whatever episode we recorded where I was like adamant that I had not heard Espresso, and you guys were like, you've heard it and you just don't think you've heard it.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know, every song sounds like this to me.
I'm kind of with you on that.
Oh my God, I completely disagree.
I mean, not on Espresso, but
not Espresso. Espresso is a lightning bolt of a pop song.
I want to feel that way. I am not being elitist about it. I like so much pop when it like cuts through for me, and the way people talked about it, I was like, this is gonna feel like fucking Greenlight or me. You know, this is gonna be one of those songs that like fucking slices through. Espresso has made no impact on me. Watching Trap, I did feel like, yeah, this sounds like what all pop music sounds like to me, or let's say 90% of pop music. It passes the sniff test in that sense.
I think the songs in Trap are serviceable.
That's what
I don't think they're particularly distinguishable from one another.
I mean,
or memorable, but I don't think that matters.
Well, I want to hear them. I actually haven't listened, because you can listen to them, right? There's a soundtrack, and I've only heard them in the context of the movie when your brain is kind of focused.
Well, no, Split's a different movie.
True. But yeah, like she's sort of like a Dua Lipa, like that's like what's going on up there,
Ariana
right?
Grande,
yeah, you know, like
influence.
Because initially I was telling people like, yeah, it's like, what if there was like a Taylor Swift concert and this happened, and then I watched
Taylor Swift,
right, and I watched the start of the movie. And I'm like, right, no, she's a little more like a Dua Lipa, like famous, can pack an arena, but not like sunshiny poppy, you know.
And like Lady Raven is Brett, right?
I don't know.
I don't think she is.
Yeah.
Okay, but is the Butcher Brett?
Yes. He is having a brat summer.
He is
in that arena.
What I was
the way
say,
that he snatched that guy into the van.
So brat.
That was so brat. That was fueled by cocaine.
Let's put a pin in that and come back to that.
Can you press the button that explodes the podcast now, Ben? Yeah. The red button that just deletes everything we've ever done.
Blows up the whole
thing.
This
is it?
I don't think.
Okay, you're gonna keep the container on it.
I don't think I want to do that.
Okay, all right.
What I was going to say,
but it's available to us. If you know,
it's not like, oh, there's been a Nepo baby backlash to the Shyamalans. It's like, this has been the narrative that he is like, here is my family. I've always cared about my family. I never realized that his daughter was born like right when he was writing Sixth Sense.
Yes.
That the whole, like the start of his career connecting with the public is part and parcel with him being a father, which is pretty young. I mean, he's one of the few directors to get nominated under the age of 30 for Best Director.
Yes, he would have been 29 when The Sixth Sense came out.
So he probably starts writing it at 27?
Yeah. Salika was born in 1996. Yeah. So he would have been like, you know, he met his wife in college and, you know, married her after that. Ishana, who directed The Watchers, was born, I think, in 2000 or 99 or something. And then Shivani, which is the only Shyamalan I haven't met, is at the Fashion Institute of Technology. So they're all like, it's like Salika does music, Ishana does movies, Shivani does fashion. Like they're all in, the arts.
Yes. What I was going to say is his movies have always been very fascinating with children. They've often had children as central focal points. It's usually an adult trying to understand a child.
Tie boys.
Sometimes they are so tired you wouldn't believe it.
Can't even wake up, even when they're awake.
They're snoring while they're brushing their teeth.
Sometimes they're really tired.
He's standing up.
But yeah, no, like Sixth Sense, obviously, Haley Joel Osment. Unbreakable has Spencer Treat Clark.
Signs has Breslin and Culkin.
Absolutely.
But this sort of like adults being a little confounded by children and children who seem a little more mature than the adults.
Right.
This feels like the movie, and I would say before this point, the film of his that is the two films. Well, let me back this up, right? He has talked so much about his period where he feels like he lost his way. There were a number of factors at play, but one of them is his children were of a certain age where he started feeling uncomfortable about making movies that were scary.
Yeah, his sort of hired gun era, which is really just two movies. But let's say Last Airbender and After Earth.
Lady in the Water is, here's a story I tell my daughters at bedtime. What if I make this instead?
Well, he does make The Happening in the middle, in between Lady in the... But
let me throw this thread out, right? Okay. And he goes to Nina Jacobson. She's like, this isn't like an M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Right.
He commits, he makes it, people are befuddled. Then
angry.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You know what? I give you that.
Yeah. Now I feel like there's quiet reclamation. You on that episode are speaking up for it, and I'm like sort of incredulous.
Ohizar Bulbasaur off-cites it as his favorite film of all time. One of the great men on the internet, Ohizar Bulbasaur. For original listeners.
But certainly at the time, derided.
Correct.
Yes.
And people were like, this guy fucking, he blew it. He hit the button on the desk.
And he cast himself as the savior of humanity. And like,
the
what is
greatest
he
writer.
thinking?
Right. Happening feels like him doing a strategic swing back of like, you know what, great. I'm going to go as hard horror, R-rated. I'm going to push the violence and people don't like it.
No, I mean, The Happening feels like the biggest, like, I feel kind of like if that movie had different actors in it even, it would probably have been greeted as like, yeah, this is like a serviceable
there's some really great set pieces in it.
But I think Wahlberg...
it's the wind part.
I know that people... I'm just like, I just think if it wasn't Wahlberg going, what's going on? Like, it would not have been as derided as it was.
No, like if that movie was Joaquin and Bryce Dallas Howard.
Wind scary?
It is, if you think too hard about Wind, it is
I did see Twisters.
Wind can be very scary.
Yes. And I can't say blanket statement, I don't think Wind be scary.
It can blow thing at you.
It can blow thing at you.
It can blow thing at you.
Now, is Wind Brat is my question.
All right. And so moving on from The Happening.
I guess I got to push the button.
But I think Happening is the moment where he has the sort of realization that he's talked about of like, I feel like my heart's not in horror. There's something that feels a little gross to me about trying to like torture an audience. I'm a dad. My children are of an age now. I'm more engaged with their lives. They're not babies, you know? So then he makes Last Airbender, which is, here's the show I watch with my daughters.
And look, it is undersung, but like it was a hit.
It was.
People hated it. But
it's despised.
Yes.
It's one of the most like toxic hits of all time.
It is.
But it made made a lot of money in theaters.
As someone who's now seen all of the show and its sequel series.
And you love them.
And I love them. I have not revisited the movie because I don't remember liking it. But Netflix had that sort of very faithful quote unquote version recently that nobody liked.
Right.
And I saw some people kind of in that prequels way who had kind of grown up with that movie being like, he got some stuff more right.
Right.
And he kind of did this, which they didn't dare to do. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I saw a little bit of that floating around and I was like, we're going to reclaim The Last Airbender? Are we sure? Like, but anyway.
Then he does After Earth, which is like total for hire, right? Like,
that's Smith pursuing him. Yeah. Right. Like pretty much. Yeah. Obviously with Smith being like, I have a story idea. And Shyamalan writes it.
Up until Trap, that is the movie of his that is most explicitly about parenthood, for how much it seems to be a major theme in his life. You have films that are impacted by his...
Kids are present in basically every movie he ever makes, except for... Are they in The Happening? I guess, but they are. They're around.
Yeah, The Happening, they end up adopting John Leguizamo's daughter. That's sort of... I mean, he has different versions of family, of parenthood. The Visit is obviously dealing with two levels of parenthood, where it's so much about sort of
no, but
Catherine Hahn.
He was really upfront with me with like The Visit split. My kids are teenagers.
Yeah.
Like at that point, you know,
That's what
and
he
the
said.
kids in the movies
When they
are
became teenagers
yes.
and they were the audience, they were now the age where they could be an audience for a horror movie. He was like, I'm back into the idea of making nasty movies.
Look, the word he kept using with me with Trap is devilish.
Yeah.
Like he's like, I'm having fun. I'm
said,
being a naughty boy.
Let's let the devil out of the elevator.
Like, yeah. Like, you know, that's just, he's like, I have not, he said the movies that he's had the most fun, like writing and making are Signs, The Visit, and this.
Yeah.
Where he's like, I am having the most fun. I am just like,
me so
kind of at my silliest.
Yeah.
And kind of like, could I do this?
Yeah.
Right. You know, like, cause like Knock at the Cabin. Old, I think is incredible. Knock at the Cabin, I think is good.
I think Knock the Cabin's okay.
Yeah.
But those are both like pretty sad. Obviously so weighted by like, oh my God, my kids are getting older than me.
He's
what happened to the babies?
Feelings about humanity
like
in those two movies.
I think Old is fun at times, obviously in a mid-sized sedan, and you know, like there's all kinds of like wacky stuff in it. But
doesn't Old have kind of a hopeful ending because the whole thing of them escaping and like
it does, but I mean, it has really sad shit in it.
No, it's sad. But I remember when we saw Knock at the Cabin, like we kind of just
Cabin is
we just stayed in our seats and we were just kind of bummed out by it.
It's a huge bummer, although it does also
end with boogie shoes.
End happily.
Right.
In that, like, they're not just all dead, I suppose. But Knock at the Cabin is definitely the biggest bummer.
Yeah, super bummer. And then for Trap, I was giggling, cackling, clapping my hands, stomping my feet. Yeah. And Griffin and I at one point pointed at each other.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
It was so sold out that I could get one single seat, the row in front of you and your husband, Marie. And then our friend Pat Willem sat one seat behind you. So occasionally we'd sort of turn around to give looks. Ben and I went last night. It was also nearly sold out. We thought we were going to have to sit in the front row and then someone exchanged tickets. But it was basically sold out a Thursday at 7 p.m.
Right. That's awesome.
And good audience responses both times. We can talk about the audience responses, which are interesting and now feel like we've come back to a sort of like 2000s Shyamalan thing where the audience is alternating between feeling very locked in and kind of is
perplexed.
This right and laughing at points and it's like is this a joke or not?
Totally.
Yes, it's supposed to be funny.
It does feel like, obviously, look, The Beach That Makes You Old was kind of a major meme, right? But like it feels like this is the first time in a while that the general culture has just kind of been on board with like, it's like Josh Hartnett's a serial killer. I get it. You know what I mean? Like, right. Like everyone's just kind of like, I want to see that. Right. And I like him. You know what? I miss him. I want to see him. I'm glad he's here. You know, like there's a general cultural happiness.
Let me try to tie a bow on the point I've taken too long to try to make.
But then Marie wants to say
something. No, absolutely. That's why I want to bow it up.
Okay, bow it up.
All of his films have, in so many ways, so directly related to his identity as a father. But he has not really explicitly been making a movie about his identity as a father until this one. After Earth is so much more about Will Smith's relationship to his son as a father,
right? Even
if he did write it. Ben turns to me like 30 minutes in and he's like, is it insane that I'm kind of rooting for him? And I went, no, that's
the point.
The whole fucking point. This is what he's doing. And I think like the first time I saw it, I was a little perplexed by like, I'm into this, but I wouldn't say I feel scared. I'm not feeling the thriller on edge thing. And then you realize the trick he's doing is he is building the discomfort from making you identify with this guy because this is the closest he's ever come to a self-insert character in any of his movies.
Griffin, he would be so happy to hear you say that because the first thing he said to me about Trap was that. It was basically like, I wanted to like collapse protagonist in an attack.
Yes.
Right? Like that's the challenge I wanted to set myself. Yeah. That's the first thing that's interesting to me about Trap.
The trailer comes out, people go, why is he spoiling the twist? It's like, no, the twist is the setup because he's flipping the way you would usually watch a movie like this, which is most people would write this film where you're rooting for the guy and he's trying to help his daughter escape under the assumption that they're trying to avoid the killer. And at the end, you find out he's the killer. And instead, he's playing this fucking trick on the audience and being like, no, you got to live with this guy. Right. You got to live in his head. Right. You got to fucking watch conversations basically from his POV very often, the way he shoots it.
Sure.
And it's because it is Shyamalan trying to reckon with like this 25-year cycle of like, why do I do this? What is this part of me that like defines myself as like an artist and as a father? And I keep the two worlds separate until the summer of 2024.
Yeah.
He had always kept the two worlds separate, even though they were always kind of informing each other. And now it's like, I genuinely do care about my daughter and my family and being that kind of guy. But also there's a part of me that wants to do fucked up, nasty shit. I want to be devilish. And I fought it for a couple of years. I said, that's too gross. Let me make fucking Will Smith movies and Nickelodeon adaptations because I didn't want to scare my daughters. But these two things coexist.
And his daughter is the hero in the movie.
That's why all this shit's so interesting. Marie, what do you want to say?
By this time I've forgotten.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Maybe something about, I was thinking about the social media marketing for this movie, which I really enjoyed, which is his fun facts.
Yeah. M. Night Shyamalan's personal Twitter account that tweets out, right, like.
Fact number 1, we shot this on film. Fact number 2, we are so locked into the protagonist's perspective that we own, like the camera's only catching what he could see of the concert.
You only move closer to Salika to Lady Raven, sorry, if they move closer.
That's fucking good. Yeah.
Fact number 3, he hired Thai director of photography Sayombu Mudikprum off Call Me By Your Name. Obviously, he
also is an Apichatpong
is right, the Apichatpong guy, but also he shot Challengers this year. He's having a hot year.
The movie looks so fucking good.
It does. And it's a movie where he's creating a bunch of innate challenges for himself and how to shoot it. It's not the kind of environment he usually works in. You're dealing with an environment that is like largely pitch black in reality.
Yes.
Right?
I mean,
like, how do you light this? How do you shoot this? David, do you have any insight into this?
It was a nightmare to make this movie.
Well,
I'm sure.
Watching this, I felt
not a nightmare to write. Loved writing it. Loved thinking about it. But
he said it was the fastest he ever wrote a script.
That is true. And he said the Signs had been the fastest before that. Even though both films have dark elements, both had me laughing every day as I sat down to write them. That was one of his fun facts.
Devilish.
But I think he's look, the thing he strips as much budget out of his movies now as he can, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to make them cheaply so that it's his whole
I think
process.
You're about to answer my question. Yeah.
Okay. What's your question?
No, you go ahead. I want yeah.
But he said just the logistics of this, and he's always doing a new challenge, right? With Old, it was you're shooting on the beach or like there's always new.
And the beach makes you old.
And I think the other nightmare with Old is it's like characters age, you have different actors, so you're swapping people in and out all the time.
And deep pandemic
big COVID.
Right.
Yep.
He was in a bubble.
But with this, it's just like you're in an arena.
Mm-hmm.
That's the set,
right,
for half the movie.
Most thrillers are about enclosed spaces that are pretty tight.
Yes, and you need the concert going on in the background for scenes, right? You're not going to dub that in later or whatever. Yep. And I think that was just a huge fucking pain in the ass.
And they're not in the front row. This is my question: is I'm watching this the first time, and the first thing I clock is like, those don't look like CGI crowds to me. I'm so used to that has become the de rigueur thing, especially post-pandemic. Mm-hmm. They got used to it. Right. You watch any fucking episode of Ted Lasso, you're like, there is no one in the stands.
The CG on Ted Lasso is great. I don't know what you're talking about.
The crowd is filled with...
Brett Goldstein is a CG character, right?
Yes. Yeah, he's not real. But I'm watching this, and for a movie that I know had a pretty tight budget, I'm like, every time, and I'm sure they were very strategic about, you're shooting just this part, the crowd is only filled in that sliver, but still, it's deep shots where you're looking back behind.
But I think that was all really annoying.
Those are all fucking people, but he did it.
Yeah, it's why, yes, he did not shoot in Philadelphia. Murray, I'm sorry to tell you.
No, I immediately clocked that it was not Philadelphia.
And I assume it was because this place they used was, gettable and affordable.
They shot the film in Toronto, correct?
Entirely.
To the point of he knows this is funny. He is trying to be funny, a thing that people will fight about with M. Night Shyamalan movies forever. Most of the local hires in this film are people from the Toronto comedy scene.
Sure.
I have several very close friends who are comedians in Toronto, and like the woman Vanessa Smythe, who plays like the stage manager, who's like helping them so much, who I think is excellent in the film.
She is.
Someone I've known for like 15 years.
Really? You didn't tell us that you knew her.
My mind was kind of blown that she was in it. They might have told me at some point, but I was like, that's like my like friend's friend who they did like high school plays with and college plays with. And who like did improv and shit. Same with the fucking merch stand guy. Can I tell you a secret? Yeah, but also a Toronto comedy guy. Like all these Toronto comedy people
fucking rock.
I follow are posting with pride of like, so cool to see our friend in an M. Night Shyamalan movie. And that extends to basically all the roles of that size.
Is the daughter
pulled
Canadian?
from the comedy scene?
No, she's I think Australian. Yes, Ariel Donahue.
She was good.
She's great.
I thought she was very grounded
She's a classic
in a movie
Shyamalan
that is
kid.
very
Dude,
That's
she
his
rocks.
thing
Yeah.
is like the kid is always the most centered one.
Yeah.
Even when the kid is haunted or
Right.
a problem, the kids are always the one who have their like feet on the ground.
I talked to Shyamalan the first time. I haven't, the movie's nowhere close to done the first time I hang out with him.
Yep.
I talked to Hartnett, who was given the wrong phone number for me and apparently called that phone number like 40 times before someone was finally like, it's actually, this.
Can you imagine?
And he called me and he was like, I have been
Josh
harassing
Hartnett?
someone.
No.
He's like, they've gotten so many phone calls from me. And Hartnett was like, and I got so mad at you. Like you weren't answering.
Yes.
Anyway. And
This guy's blowing me off.
Hartnett is like, I'm like asking questions and he's like, you haven't seen the ending, right? You haven't seen the whole movie, right? And I'm like,
For a while, he had only showed you the first act. 'Cause
Right.
That was what was locked.
Yeah. And I was like, no. And he was like, well, I don't want to spoil it for you. I don't want to, I don't want to fuck with your viewing experience and all that. And I'm like, okay. But then in my back of my mind, I'm like, it better not be that the kid knows about all this.
Yes.
Because that would just felt like
an
the most
accomplice.
obvious,
Right.
disappointing twist. And the only reason it's even occurring to me is it's like, is there going to be a big reversal?
It's the way Shyamalan has fucked himself and continues to have to like struggle to live within the expectations of how people watch his movies.
I agree.
You're
but I
always
also
on
think
edge going, is he going to do some shit?
he does have the advantage that you're on edge in a way of like, what is it going to be
It's
though, right?
his greatest power and his greatest weakness
Right.
at the same time.
And so I was really happy once I finally saw the movie that it's like, no, the daughter doesn't know about it. She thinks her dad is being weird.
Mhm.
And this revelation is devastating to her and it's played quite naturally.
Can we
Talk about the movie?
No, can we talk about Hartnett for a little bit?
Hardy Hart.
He is phenomenal in this film.
I think he's so good.
Our buddy Patrick Willems hosted a Josh Hartnett podcast
sure
called
did.
We Heart Hartnett for several years in his like real fallow period before even Guy Ritchie reclaimed him.
Yeah, I guess he was on not P Blunt. What's it called?
Penny Dreadful.
Penny Dreadful. God, Penny Dreadful.
He played a werewolf, don't he?
I think he
this is
did.
a real nasty story.
Yeah.
Is that who he played? My wife watched Penny
I think
Dreadful. I
he
never
does
did.
play a werewolf because
Yes, he's the wolf man.
He's the
People
werewolf
have been
one,
telling me to
isn't he?
watch Penny Dreadful because I was like, Josh Hartnett, I was not familiar with your game. People
Yeah.
are like, well, you would be if you watched Penny Dreadful. I'm like, okay.
Billy
now's the time to get
Piper is in that show, and I love her.
I think what's his name? Rory Kinnear, I believe, plays Frankenstein's monster.
He plays Frankenstein's
It's kind of an
monster.
interesting cast.
I heard that one of the EPs is the devil himself.
What?
Satan.
The most devilish of all.
Executive producer. Satan.
The movie ends. I turn to Patrick.
Yeah.
I go, I mean, you must
Vindicated?
be feeling so good about the fucking stock you bought 10 years ago.
And
And he was like, I'm cashing out. The return on investment is unbelievable here.
what's your relationship with Josh Hartnett as a woman my age, Marie?
Well, this is the
Because I grew up with Josh Hartnett.
This is
and
the thing.
girls being moony-eyed
I
over
was
him.
aware of him as a teen people sex symbol,
Sure.
Mhm.
but I was a little young
Mhm.
for a lot
Mhm.
of the
I guess
movies
you're-
that he was making in his prime.
I guess you're younger than me, actually. Right.
Yeah,
So he made R-rated movies.
they
like,
they were either like adult R-rated movies or they were in a genre that was unappealing to me as a young woman.
Because the Faculty might be a PG-13.
I've seen
yeah.
The Faculty and I've seen Virgin Suicides.
Yeah. Which is, until this moment, Virgin Suicides was the one performance where I was like, well, this is where I get what people were saying about
Oh no, the
him.
Faculty was an R. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but again, I saw those movies later, and I still haven't seen Pearl Harbor, which a lot of people are shocked by.
I have also never seen Pearl Harbor.
Wait. Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. Her not seeing it. I'm surprised you've never seen
Well,
it.
time to slap Bay on the spreadsheet.
I mean, here's the thing: Pearl Harbor. It was like, oh, everyone loved Titanic. Here's another movie that's like Titanic.
Yeah.
But okay, you're swapping in Faith Hill for Celine Dion. No,
That's when you were out immediately.
right? And then also, it's like, okay, Titanic. It's a classic 4-quadrant. There's
Mhm.
stuff for the boys.
Yep.
There's stuff for the girls.
Yeah.
But it's not about war.
Correct.
Pearl Harbor's about war.
I think
I'm out.
Well, the
as
mistake.
a child.
A few things to say about Pearl Harbor, which apparently I'm the only person who's seen it because there's no way Ben saw Pearl Harbor. Because Ben's like, Pearl Harbor is something they assign papers on, so I won't be going.
Ultimate homework movie.
I saw
it's a $200 million homework movie.
No, the problem with Pearl Harbor is what you're talking about is that the studios are kind of like, we got a Titanic on our hands, baby, because people kiss in this.
Yeah.
And it's tragic.
Love triangle.
And Pearl Harbor is not about war because it is largely about people hanging out at Pearl Harbor before Pearl Harbor happens. And you're just sitting there looking at your watch being like, isn't Pearl Harbor going to happen at some point?
It's more just a tragedy.
Right.
Yeah.
And then in the last hour, they tack on tons of action because they're clearly like, you came here for this too. We have to give it to you. And it feels often a little superfluous.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about Pearl Harbor, I mean, it's not a successful film.
Sure.
I haven't seen it in a long time. The action, some of the action is impressive in the Michael Bay way.
Mm-hmm.
Affleck is so fucking awful in it and so like lost that Hartnett is really, you're like, this guy at least is kind of natural and charming.
And
like,
it was a huge deal that they were like elevating him that quickly to that level.
Yeah.
My memory.
Well, his first two movies are Halloween H2O, where he plays Jamie Lee Curtis's son.
Yes, which he's good in. He's
and
I mean, in
The Faculty.
Yeah. Halloween H2O is 45 minutes long and is fairly watchable, but not amazing. And he's good in it. But the Faculty rocks in. That movie's fun.
From like, you're a dimension horror, like ensemble player to you are one of the three faces on a Michael Bay Memorial Day release was really fast. Well, and it was matched with this energy of everyone being like, he is the guy. He is the future. Well, all women love him. Studios are betting on him.
In between, there was, obviously the Virgin Suicides.
Which he's incredible in.
He's really good in that. He's doing exactly what the assignment is.
Side note, while we're still in this period, just want to acknowledge that he always had weird hair.
I also feel like it was, no one quite knew what to do with his hair.
Yeah.
Like, should we make it long? Should we make it like,
this is his best hair look ever. Is this movie.
Oh my God. He's so fucking hot in this movie.
And it ends with him fucking just playing with the hair, basically.
When he took, well, we're going to get to it, but when he took his shirt off.
Well.
For no reason.
But audience
I clapped. I clapped.
That was the reason, my friend.
And you know what? Great body.
Yeah,
he's got a great body. He's a big guy. He's statuesque.
Not I get
not
I
in
saw
the
this
annoying
movie,
Chris Pratt like roided up way.
With my husband, and
No
he was like, okay, is this like when you got really excited in the Austin Powers commentary when you're talking about Mike Myers' body? And I'm like, kind of.
He's got a better body. We have to drop Mike Myers.
You're an incredibly smart person with great opinions, but Mike Myers is kind of cut in this. It remains one of the most insane things I've ever heard anyone say.
All right. His 2001 is huge. It's not just
he looks good. He's kind of cut.
It's not just Pearl Harbor. It's O, which is this opportunity for him to play against type.
I heard O is good. I would like to see it.
I think it's a very flawed movie, but he's good in it.
O is also a movie that's held back for a while because of Columbine.
Yeah.
One of his earliest films.
Is it a school shooting movie?
Yes.
It's set in high school.
So it sits on a shelf for like 2 years and changes distributors.
There's a school shooting in Othello.
That's how they modernize the fucking Town and Country is one of his first movies ever, which he shoots around the same time as Halloween
Also
H2O.
came out in 2001 after
comes out later.
Much delay.
So there's like backlog stuff.
There's also Black Hawk Down.
Yes.
Which I think he is wonderful in. It's a bit of a boring role in a way because he's the good guy, as much as that movie can have a good guy. A movie I've seen so
one of the
many
most
times.
David movies of all time.
And so then, even though Pearl Harbor wasn't well received, it is kind of like, okay, well, we got a star in our hands.
It's this weird thing where like that movie, the poster is just him.
Yeah, it's him sitting in the helicopter.
Ridley Scott movie that got Oscar nominations and was a big hit.
Huge hit.
And yet everyone went to see it and they were like, oh, he's not really the lead in this. I guess he kind of de facto is, but it's not a movie that has a conventional.
It's an ensemble.
So it was like, oh, this feels like the movie that should make him a star, except you watch it and you're like, well, it's not really designed to make anyone a star.
Then he did 40 Days and 40 Nights, which is a pretty boneheaded movie that did okay.
Yeah.
Then he did Hollywood Homicide, which is a pretty stupid movie that didn't do very well.
That's the one with Harrison Ford.
Yeah, this is when I feel like he, as he put it to me and has put it to other people, is starting to be like, what the fuck am I doing?
Right.
Like,
and Hollywood Homicide is the thing that Tarantino always talks about that the studios have now abandoned, which is like the way you launch stars is you put them with established stars. You need your movie that's like here's an Oscar-winning legend, and here's the new guy.
So like The Color of Money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like the perfect version of that, right? Yeah. And it's like there's a baton pass that makes the audience believe this guy and accept that they're going to go for the crown or whatever, or sit in the throne. Except that's the worst version of that movie maybe ever. And then around this time, there's the story that he's being offered $50 million to do 3 Superman movies. He passes on.
The Ratner Superman.
Yes.
Yes, the Brett Ratner Superman. He as Shyamalan put it to me, he declined the cape.
Yeah.
And
it codifies in that moment. People are like, guess he doesn't want to be a movie star.
Yeah, because after that, it's Wicker Park, which I've never seen, sort of serviceable thriller, right? It's Sin City. He has the little role, which he's actually kind of good in.
I forgot he was in that.
Well, he was the self-funded proof of concept short that Robert Rodriguez shot to sell people on. Here's how the film would look.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So it's just
like the beginning of the movie. Yeah,
and then once he made the rest of the movie, he was like, let me shoot one final thing with him at the end to tie it back in.
In 2006, he does like The Black Dahlia and Lucky Number 11, which are 2 movies that don't do well, but are, I feel like, better regarded now.
People like Lucky Number 11.
He's really good in Slevin.
He's good in Slevin.
A movie that's kind of strange.
It's kind of a stupid movie. It's also called Lucky Number 11.
I mean, that's a major issue. But to ground a thing, Marie and I being the same age, right?
In 2007, just to wrap it, is 30 Days of Night. That, I feel like, is his last large-scale movie.
Yes.
For basically 10 plus years.
And it's like, okay, so he's like headlining September horror releases. Is this what happened to this guy who we thought was supposed to be the next X, Y, or Z?
Right.
I was like very befuddled by the whole Josh Hartnett thing across the 2000s that you've just laid out. Mm-hmm. When everyone was like, this is the guy, I was like, I have no strong feelings about him.
Yeah.
He seems sturdy and fine.
Right.
Virgin Suicides is the only one where I was like, he's got some juice in this. Mm-hmm. The charisma is undeniable. The heartthrob thing, I was always like, this guy looks like an old man. He looks like an old man in a 20-year-old's body.
Kind of a funny face.
As I've gotten older,
I never thought that. I just thought this guy looks like he, cut his own hair, like...
That was part of it.
Like a shaky hand.
But I think in my dumb, like, straight boy, young dude thing, I was just like, this guy has, like, weird teeth and a unibrow and his haircuts are dumb. How can you think he's hot? Hot guys look like, I don't know, Mark McGrath from Sugar Ray.
And his teeth are very attractive. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm talking about...
I'm talking
about me being a dumb 10-year-old.
The only thing that was weird about him was his hair. He had like baby bangs at one point.
This is my Ewan McGregor thing all over again. The point is, I'm putting myself on the cross here. That means that I watched this movie and I'm like,
you martyr.
He's hit his ideal age.
For sure.
I kind of think.
Well, yeah.
I mean, when you saw him in the Ritchie movies and then Oppenheimer, you were kind of like, dang, right. Yeah.
And he's
Hartnett
like
just
growing
needed
into
to
his
mature,
body and like all of it makes total sense to me now. And this performance is just like genuinely did not know this guy had it in him. I had been like accepting the narrative of like, we kind of gave this guy a bad run, and like, he's good in the Ritchie movies. He's good in Oppenheimer. I'm like, yeah, this is like really, really solid sort of like ensemble work. And then here's a movie carried by him where he is doing an incredibly complicated, very stylized, very bizarre performance. I think incredibly well.
Yeah. And this was the thing that like, we did talk to Pat Williams about, where I was like, I thought he was an Abercrombie model turned actor, like an Ashton Kutcher type.
Sure.
No, he was a trained actor
from Minnesota
who worked at a video store, who was like really into films.
He does have the classic thing of he was a football player, and then in the middle of high school he gets an injury, can't play football anymore.
Yeah,
and some nice teacher is like, "Why don't you try theater?"
Right.
So
do you want to, and then he gets so into theater. And as you say, he like starts working in a rental store and sees like Train Spotting or 12 Monkeys or whatever. Like, just like, whoa.
There are a lot of guys who have that story where it's like,
Yeah. I think I just assumed he was a dumb.
No, he's clearly not. And watching this a second time, I was locking in even more to the way he builds the tics of his character, which I think he does incredibly well. There are little things, and I started to like really try to lock into, because the first Shyamalan watch of any of his movies, it's what we're saying. He knows that you're sitting there watching, trying to figure out what he's doing. He is in this very rare position that is similar to, I'm not saying in terms of ability, but legendary status or whatever. But it's similar to Hitchcock, and it's part of him putting himself in these movies, and the movies being sold as from the mind of M. Night Shyamalan or whatever, where it's like every audience member is going there thinking about what is M. Night trying to do. There are very few people at that level. And for horrors and thrillers, genres that are manipulative, that are all about the filmmaker trying to fuck with you.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. The cameos are him always kind of being like, it's me.
Right.
Ain't I a stinker? I'm here, the guy filming the beach that makes you older, on the cliff or whatever the fuck it is. It's the first time you're sitting there watching and trying to figure out what he's doing. Is there going to be a twist? What would the twist be? Where is this going? What is the point of this? All this. Second time, you're just sort of watching it and actually trying to take apart the craft of what he's trying to do. And two big things I noticed are almost all of the compositions in this movie are like 10 degrees off from being perfectly symmetrical. Just a little bit.
Gotta see it
and
again.
Especially when most of the conversations that Hartnett has are shot from inside the conversation, with him almost doing a demi sort of Silence of the Lambs thing. Right. Kind of like head on. But yet the eye lines are just a little bit off.
Right.
The composition is just a little bit off.
He's always kind of pretending.
For a movie, well, and also for a movie about a guy with obsessive compulsive disorder that is trying to place you in his head.
Yes.
There is a sense of unease built from like, why can't she just move like 1 inch over this way? And once I noticed it, I kept being like, he's actually not breaking this rule. It is like consistent throughout the entire thing.
Oh, yeah.
Even when within a shot, the blocking changes and people move and land on very exact spots, it's never totally fucking right.
And it's getting more and more aggravating for him.
Correct.
Yes.
And the most kind of like correct any of his compositions get, I would say, in this movie are the couple of times they cut to Hartnett, really shallow focus all the way in the side of the frame, watching people's response to the violence he's just created.
Right, where he's kind of enjoying it.
But is also like, I get to just be a guy now.
Right,
I'm disappearing into the crowd. This isn't about me. It's about how everyone else is reacting to this thing. And outside of that, it's just like, and to get back to the fucking dialogue question that always comes up with all these movies.
I don't get it. His dialogue is so obvious.
I think there are a couple of reasons. Part of it is like it's classic genre thriller manipulation. You have to get the information out. You have to give people the pieces so you can play with them.
Yeah, he has a very stylized way of writing dialogue.
Yeah,
just generally.
But here's another thing. Anytime I hear people be like, well, no one talks like that, it feels weird. And I'm like, yeah, like it's putting you in a constant state of unease.
It works so well in Trap. I agree with you for this exact reason. You're already in the perspective of a guy who is kind of faking being a normal guy.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that everything kind of clangs a little strangely.
Not only is he faking being a normal guy, but this is a guy who is perplexed by the way everyone else acts.
Yes.
He has the line later where he's like, when I get the urge, it's because I come across people. And he's like, I don't get it often, but I come across people who think they're whole.
Right.
And when he's talking to like the mom of the other girl, you feel the intensity in those conversations as if you're like Jodie Foster talking to Hannibal Lecter, right? And it's like, he's like, who is this fucking woman? What is this? How do I have a fucking conversation with her?
But then there is also because I'm not calling M. Night Shyamalan a serial killer, but there is the highly relatable feeling of just like him being like, I actually have a work. It's like he just got a text message from his boss.
Yes.
Being like, hey, can you send me an email? And while he's rushing to do that, someone from his family life is like, hey, our daughters. And he's just like, I'm in work mode right now.
So I was like starting to try to lock into the language of his tics and his twitches, right? And there's like a shoulder shake thing he does and like a one eyelid blink and like little sort of facial convulsions when things like upset him.
Right.
And I noticed that I think, save until maybe the end with Alison Pill, or some of the stuff with Lady Raven in the living room, the scene where the tics give him up the most is the long-held shot of him watching his daughter brought out on stage to dance with Lady Raven.
Or he's on the side of the stage.
And he holds on that for a long time. You're seeing part of the screen with the video of what's happening, but you're not really cutting to her dance, right? And I'm like, is he freaking out because he's worrying that his plan for how to, now that they've gotten the backstage passes, escape won't work? No, The second she settles in and is having fun on stage, all his tics go away.
Right.
And it's like, that's a really, really telling smart choice as an actor, that it's like, everything with the daughter is real.
He wants his kid to have a good time. I mean, that's what he says at the end. Like, it was real.
He feels more anxiety
He's
over the
almost
idea
surprised at himself,
that his,
but yeah.
right, that his daughter is going to be embarrassed on stage, that
Right.
this is going to be a problem for her. And the idea of him fucking his daughter over in order to try to help himself escape
is stressing him out.
is a greater fear than getting caught.
Right. He wants to get out. Like, it's not like he's not trying to get out any way he can, but you're right. Like, he does want her to have a good time, and he doesn't want her to know that he's a serial
There's
killer.
also this element of not
the film
only
is about
does,
a guy who's a serial killer.
Right.
FYI.
He is.
His name is the Butcher.
there is also this thing where not only does he want her to have a good time, it surpasses good time. It is like the
Legendary.
absolute best case scenario. If you go to a concert, what happens?
Which is
to you?
funny to think about this girl having the same best and worst day of her life.
Right.
Look,
Well, he wants her to have a crispy time.
yeah,
That's
he
true.
wants her to keep it real crispy.
Ben, are you looking at Lady Raven merch? Is there merch out
Yeah,
there?
there is merch, as well as you could pre-order the album on vinyl.
Where is this? Is it at trapstore.com?
It's SalikMusic.myshopify.com.
okay. I like that it's all through. It's Salika store exclusive.
Right. So, okay. So the premise of Trap, yes, is Cooper, parent to Riley.
Mhm.
2 hit movies in this summer with daughters named Riley, who everyone's worried about, along with Inside Out 2.
That's true.
Cooper, parent to Riley, is taking her to see her favorite songstress, Lady Raven, at the Philadelphia Arena of Entertainment.
Music.
It has some like Japanese name or something.
Yeah,
I was like wondering if it was a reference to someone, but anyway.
Oh,
probably
that's
is.
interesting. It probably is.
And through happenstance, he notes that there are 4 billion police officers in fucking riot gear at this concert. And he makes a new pal, his pal Jamie, the vendor of shirts.
And I am sorry for not crediting this person. But
His name is Jonathan Langdon.
one of the respected film critics, I almost want to say, I don't think it was Allison Wilmore, but someone tweeted or wrote in their review, people mocking this character. And
The guy
really?
who is basically there.
M. Night,
He's
8
really
minutes in, you're
fun.
going to just have him say everything
Like, just
to a stranger?
you know what this is? It's a trap. Like,
Right.
you know, yeah.
And they were like, this is fucking M. Night. This is him being like, can I tell you how fucking good the premise of my movie is?
And it is really fucking good.
I think there is a deeper purpose to this, which is we are seeing how good Cooper is at winning people over, presenting himself as an ally and friend, and as a reliable member of society. And like, that is how he can navigate through these spaces with more ease than, say, you know, the fucking child catcher from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang could if he was in this
Probably
arena.
the most villainous character.
That's what, like, it's like if
right.
he was walking around, the cops would be like, let's get this guy.
Yeah.
And Hartnett, everyone's kind of like, well, you seem like
I mean,
you
if he's
belong
walking
here.
around, they were like, what the fuck's up with your nose?
And I do think that's what's brilliant about Shyamalan casting this guy who, as Shyamalan put it to me, like, you know, was literally a possible Superman and or Batman.
Yeah.
He supposedly met with Nolan on Batman. Hartnett has always been like, I was never offered that role. We just like had a conversation.
Hartnett was like, I blew it. I liked Nolan. I didn't want to be in a superhero movie. So I kind of was like, I'm not really interested in this. And then I saw Batman Begins and I kicked myself. And then I finally got to work with him.
And then like Knight obviously is just kind of like, this guy has darkness to him. And also is obviously kept repeating how drawn he was to just the fact that Hartnett quit Hollywood and moved to London and had a bunch of kids with his wife. And
Very
lives
M. Night
there
adjacent.
happily. Exactly.
Right. But I also think there's a third thing he's doing with this character, which is like
Directive 3.
Here's a guy who's like represents our obsession with like fucking true crime culture. If you're like, why would this guy give this all up to a stranger? It's like, because for him, this is entertainment.
Yeah, it's exciting.
It's
It
kind
is
of delightful.
exciting.
right.
Wait, did you guys know that it's inspired by a real thing?
Yeah.
This is a real thing that happened, right? Like someone did basically a sting off at a concert.
It wasn't like
This-
for one serial killer. It was a football game
Right.
where
football
they
game, okay.
rounded up a bunch of people with outstanding warrants.
A fake event.
It's like, right. It's like, I feel
We'll
like there are
give you
joke
free
versions of that,
tickets to
right?
go
Like
see a
people
football
showing up
game.
like,
Yeah.
hey, is this
Yeah.
the free speedboat convention? Like, where's my speedboat?
Such a funny line.
just sign
I
here.
clocked the second time at the beginning. That might even be ADR, where they're walking into the arena And Hartnett goes, yeah, I'm so glad they added the second afternoon concert after the first one sold out. And you're like, yeah, everything about this concert seems kind of fake and weird.
A little off,
But the thing of, I think Shyamalan interrogating to some degree, I don't think he's like self-castigating, but interrogating, like, why do I like making horror movies? Why do I like making people uncomfortable? And it's like, here's the response. It's a guy like this who's like, I fucking love this murderer. I watch all of his shit. I read about him. Can I share facts with you?
I got some photos if you want to see of his latest.
Hey, I would have been fucking obsessed with The Butcher.
Yeah.
Okay, if you are obsessed with The Butcher in a true crimey way and you work at a stadium and then they're at an arena and then they tell you like, hey, you wanna pull a shift at the trap of The Butcher, would you be into it? Or would you be scared?
1,000,000%.
Okay.
You'd be this character.
Yes.
What's the secret password that you say? Hamilton.
Hamilton.
I just feel like where people are like, how serious should I take M. Night Shyamalan? I'm like, he cast Kid Cudi as an angry like musician called The Thinker with long blonde hair who demands specific, like he is having fun.
Won't stop I fucking Josh Hart.
I mean, another scene where people burst into applause at our.
He obviously, as many people have figured out, he cast Haley Mills because this is a movie about trapping a parent.
Ben.
What?
Did you recognize who the like sort of criminal psychologist was, or whatever the sort of old
the
British
profiler,
woman, the profiler?
No.
That is Haley Mills, the like original kind of one of the original like Disney stars, who was the actress who played the twins in The Parent Trap.
The original
really?
parent.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I
Who
go
has
up to
not worked much of late.
I go up to Griffin after the movie and I'm like, it's so funny, Haley Mills, because they're having her trap a parent.
Yeah.
And,
he was like, what?
The whole fucking reason he did it. Because I'm sitting there being like, why did he cast her? Fantasy did the math on their Big Picture episode and said he thinks this is the first American studio film she has been in 60 years.
That sounds plausible.
She's done TV.
She hasn't really
She's done a lot of stuff in England.
Right. She's done some English stuff.
But it is an odd choice until you're just like, he thought it was funny to hire the girl from The Parent Trap to make a movie called Trap where she has to trap a parent.
He would never say that explicitly because I think you wouldn't want to be rude because she's honestly great in the film.
And she has been in a lot of like very weird horror movies. Like isn't the Twisted Nerve is one that she's in?
That's an old one. Yeah. That's a very controversial but fun, cool movie. Roy Bolting movie, but that's a British movie. But yeah, obviously, like that's where the idea comes from. I mean, so when he first shows me just the first chunk of the movie in his little screening room, not his big screening room in his house, his editing screening room, basically. The credits are done and they're and I'm like Hartnett, Donahue, sure, that's the girl, Shyamalan, Salika Night Shyamalan, cool, and then it says Haley Mills, and I'm like, is it a different Haley Mills?
Someone else?
And I didn't make the Parent Trap connection in my head or anything.
Right.
And I that was the one I was just like, Haley Mills. Initially, I thought she might be playing his mom.
Yeah.
Same.
But obviously that's kind of almost a non-speaking role. The visions of his mother. She only talks like one time at the end there.
I also think, and I wasn't watching this with enough discipline to like make sure this 100% checks out. I was trying. I think Haley Mills, maybe you don't see her speaking on camera until the Allison Pill scene. I think it's almost always you're seeing him see her,
or
he's hearing her, or you're seeing her from behind as she talks to people.
I think she talks. I don't think that's true.
As I said,
but I'm not seen the movie twice. I've only seen it
She's
once.
definitely like around for much of the movie, and we keep kind of clocking that she's around.
I just kept clocking that her dialogue was often, if not always, often separated from her visual. Once he has this device, if he can hear her in his ear, or he can eavesdrop in on conversations, or whatever it is.
Obviously, the other thing that I didn't realize, I go into this movie thinking Salika, yes, is in the film, but she is just performing music on stage and she's really just dressing for this.
Yeah.
I did not know she was going to be pulled into the action and kind of be the protagonist for a little chunk of it.
Can we talk about this?
She has eyes the size of globes.
Yes.
So the camera does love her, I will say. Like, more than anything else. Like her looking down the camera.
I agree. I do not think she is bad in this.
No. I don't either. I know I've seen some people saying she's bad in it. I don't agree.
I don't think she's great.
It's a huge ask.
She's fine.
It is like the whole last act of the movie really has to kind of pin on this performance, which is...
I would not say the whole last act because she goes out and there's 15 more minutes.
Okay, sure.
No, the movie isn't handed back to Hartnett.
There is 20 minutes,
but there's a
really
chunk where you're like, shit, we're with Lady Raven. She's driving the action.
And another thing I think I clocked is when she locks herself in the bathroom with the phone. I think that is the first time in the movie we actually leave Hartnett's side.
Yes, pretty much, as far as I can think of. Yeah.
And Ben, you were saying like, I'm rooting for him.
She's taken over the movie.
I'm sitting here and I'm watching and wondering, when is he going to switch it? Like at some point he has to make us turn on the guy. And that is the moment. She has to fucking be the pivot point.
Yep.
It's a big ask. And there's little shit that I just think it's like, it's almost not even about acting ability. And she's obviously not primarily an actress by trade.
No, I mean, not at all.
But there is that thing of like, I think the songs are like totally work.
Sure.
I think she is good at performing them on stage. Even the difference of like when she is doing the banter on stage, like there is an energy people have when they are regularly performing for hundreds of thousands of people, in the same way that people who are at a certain level of fame just kind of like vibrate and glow. That is hard to act. And like some of that aura of like, oh my God, the star persona here doesn't totally come across. And then you get to scenes that are like very emotionally heightened where she has to do complicated things and she's fine. There's a version of this where it's like, if he casts a former Disney Channel star who's able to handle the dramatic stuff at the end, does it like heighten the movie if they can like really nail some of those scenes more? On the other hand, from our fucking perspective, who we are in this podcast and the level of movie dorks we are, this movie is 80,000 times more interesting with it being her.
100%.
Oh my God.
It makes it the most fascinating text.
Speech about how she wrote a song about forgiving her father.
Yes. And right. And a moment then when she says, and if you have been able to let go of a similar sort of resentment in your life, hold up your phone.
Yeah.
And Hartnett looks at his daughter doing that and is perplexed. It is the other moment in the movie where he maybe looks the most terrified.
Look, his primary thing when I say like, I'm not Shyamalan.
Yeah.
Like, well, you know, why Philadelphia? Why have you always stayed here? But he's like, I always wanted to be home in time for dinner. I always wanted to be with my kids.
Yeah.
And then I talked to Ishana and Salika together. They both hopped on Zoom and
they live together.
As I'm about to tell you, they both hop on Zoom and Salika was there for a bit and she's chatting to me. Then Ishana joins and Salika's like, Ishana, are you at home? And Ishana's like, yeah, where are you? And she's like, I'm at home too. We're both home.
Wait, their house is so big. Oh my God.
But they were also they were also kind of like, oh, great. Now we can hang out. You know, like there was a cuteness to it. Yes, there wasn't also like we grew up in a gigantic house, but there was just sort of like
they also share an apartment together.
I think they do. But
the New York Times.
There's a sweet Esther did a piece on the on this Shyamalan Girls,
yes,
which you can read. Esther Zuckerman,
the great Esther Zuckerman.
Look, it sounds like he was an intense parent in some ways. Like the thing I think Salika told me of like, if you're gonna watch The Little Mermaid when you're like 6 years old, he's like, we're turning the lights off.
Sure.
You're sitting still. We're finishing the film.
We're going to analyze this from a viewpoint of story construction.
We're going to talk about it afterwards. Yeah. We're not like flipping through cable and like, oh, Little Mermaid is on. Or, you know, it's like, no. This is a serious art form.
Also, so much of Shyamalan's identity is like, I am like the child of like immigrants who like put me into a Catholic school despite not being Catholic because it was the private school with
only Hindu boy at his
best
Catholic
education.
School. Yes.
And they were like, doctor or lawyer, you have the freedom to choose between the two options. And he locks into the idea of being a filmmaker very resolutely at a very young age and has to be so headstrong to push past their expectations and disappointment.
Which says they were very baffled by it.
How you get to Sixth Sense by 29.
Yes.
You know, and it's like that's carried on to him in an interesting way with three daughters who are creative, who he's clearly supported as much as anyone could support their daughters.
But
there's an intensity, I think.
I think he would be the first to admit that he's had that sort of like, the arts are important and they matter to me very much and they must matter to you too. So yes, you'll be learning the piano at a young age. Right. You'll be watching movies. We'll be discussing art.
As if it is trying to put them on the pipeline to be a doctor or a lawyer.
They are all interested in the arts.
Yes.
And he is incredibly proud of them and talks about them all the time. And every single, like, I talked to Josh Hartnett. I talked to Bryce Howard about which was a blast. Yeah. You know, I talked to Mike DeLuca, you know, at Warner Brothers, and they're always just like immediately like, aren't his kids great? Like, have you met his kids? Yeah. You know, like it's clear that they're always around.
Yeah.
And the way Bryce put it was like they were on set always, you know, like it's a family thing. Like, honestly, when he called me to talk about The Village, I thought he was calling me to ask about what's it like to be a director raising a kid. Like, you grew up on sets.
Yeah.
what should Bryce was just like, I thought he wanted advice. I didn't think he wanted me to be in a movie.
Wild.
Right.
Yeah.
Because she'd never been in a movie.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I want them to work together again.
I do too. I mean, for sure. She said she would.
Yeah.
I mean, they've done 2 movies together, obviously.
I think it would benefit both of them without being rude. Right?
It would be so cool for them to do a movie together, Bryce and Knight, and for it to rock. That would be so cool.
Yes. Yeah.
As much as I enjoy multiple performances she's given, she's never been better than she was in The Village. Like when you saw her in The Village, you were like, this is one of the major new stars.
I haven't seen it, but is she good in Manderley?
That's an impossible question.
She's totally good, given especially that situation must have been really overwhelming for a really young new actor.
Yeah.
It's like you're replacing Nicole Kidman on Lars von Trier's set, and he's, and it's a Dogville set, but this time he's tackling race in America.
Yeah, I just can't fathom.
She's good in it. It's a really, I don't know, man.
Mark, that question is like asking, is Steve-O good at hammering a board into his forehead? With like a rusty nail, and you're like, in the sense that he can take it, he survives.
He survived.
He survives.
Bryce Howard was a delight to talk to. I talked to her in this very office because it was right after a podcast.
Oh, on a Zoom.
Oh, I thought
if you
here.
Invited her here onto your fucking
upstate.
Mets podcast, I was going to be so angry.
And, she was really, really, really nice. Like everyone I talked to was obviously very lovely and cordial or whatever, but she had genuine kind of like, I can talk all day. Like, this is fun.
Anything
He's great.
for M. Night. Yeah.
And that kind of enthusiasm is amazing. But I wonder if I've been like, great, let's keep talking. Like, let's talk about Spider-Man. And then I'll be like, Manderley, fond memories? Good? Like, I wonder if I could have stopped her in her tracks with Manderley.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the one where she's like, oh, I don't know if I want to talk about Manderley. Maybe not. Maybe she'd be like, oh, that was so fun.
She had a 2-picture deal and they never got to make the third one. That must have driven her crazy.
Washington, right? Was the name of the final. Yeah. Maybe he should make it. Oh, except he's suffering from like medical issues now, right?
I thought someone said he was like, he had Parkinson's and he's not going to direct again. And then someone else was like, no, he's fine. He is making another movie. I don't know.
Well, I think he said like, I'm going to take a break, but I can work with the symptoms. Okay. So maybe he'll make another movie.
A lot of that going around these days, unfortunately.
But yes, his relationship to his children is clearly very close.
Yeah.
But this does kind of, it feels like the confession of someone being like, I've always had my other self. And like, how do I reconcile these things?
Not to keep quoting Big Picture, which I obviously listen to rapidly, but Sean interviewed the In a Violent Nature guy.
Yeah, sure.
And Fennessy had
Mr. Scary is his name.
Yes, Mr. Scary.
What is his name? His name is Chris Nash.
Yes. Fennessy like kicked off with an incredibly long question that was just about like, I'm just interested in the psychology of what makes someone want to make a film this nasty. You seem like a well-adjusted guy. What is it in terms of like being able to like release some part of your like psyche? Like, is this processing something that scares you? Is it something deep inside of you? Because I think about this a lot as someone who watches these movies and I don't feel violent, but why do I love watching insane violence? And why have I loved it since I was a child? And the guy just responded like, I really try to not interrogate that. And he wasn't being cagey. And he was just like, honestly, Sean,
you're thinking about this harder than I am.
He was like, with all due respect, if I try to like pull apart that ball, I'm never going to be able to like put myself back together. I don't think about it.
Which I think is true of a lot of filmmakers where you'll see them being interviewed and someone will pose a question and they'll be like, oh, that does make sense.
Yes.
I never thought about it that way. You've realized something that I was unconsciously doing.
This movie is Shyamalan thinking about it. I don't think he's thinking about with a sense of guilt of like, why am I a monster?
No, because primarily his feeling is certainly, I want to entertain people.
Of course.
It's not right. Like,
but what is this compulsion
tear my chest open
to scare people? Which he's doing in a way that is not malicious, but it is a weird impulse to have, you know?
It's a fair point. To be a little stinker.
And how does that coexist with me just like caring more than anything about protecting my daughters?
Right.
Ben, did you like Trap? Yeah, I feel like
liked
we
it a
haven't
lot.
heard from Ben, actually.
What was can you repeat your line you said when we were in the lobby?
You said it was Trap-a-doo. Trap-a-doo.
Trapalacious.
5 traps out of
The
traps.
trappiest movie of the year. You
No, what'd
said
you say?
something afterwards. I mean, I'll say it if you don't remember that I thought was very good. You said, what I love about that is that feels like the kind of movie I would have seen 5 times on TNT.
Yeah.
And no one else makes that anymore.
Yeah. it was just a fun, entertaining movie that I didn't have to like think really hard about.
Right, but that's what we'll be doing for you.
Right.
Is thinking way too hard about this fun, entertaining
and
movie.
making people angry.
Right.
We were talking yesterday with a friend of ours before we went to see it, and he was like, the struggle with it is the thing I respect is he was aiming for 3, and he nailed a 3-star movie. Versus like some of the shit like Old and Knock at the Cabin that he's done recently, even Glass, where it's like he's trying weird shit and some of it works more than others.
Glass is, I think, by far his riskiest, biggest swing,
I mean,
which he got to make because Split had been so huge and he has big actors and all that. But
Glass is a borderline antagonistic movie.
Yes. Whereas like, as he told me, like he was like, look, my sweet spot is hour 45, right? I really concentrate on that. Glass is 2 hours 10. Like Glass kind of breaks a lot of his rules, I feel like.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Glass is fascinating.
Yes.
I'm happy it exists.
I love that it exists.
And it did make money, but it probably pissed people off the most of his recent
It's another hit that made people furious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think he'll be doing anything that ambitious again. Like he seems to be more back in the stripped down genre stuff.
Do you know what's up
he
next?
He says he has his next 4 movies planned.
4! My fucking guy.
We're gonna keep doing this podcast for a long ass time.
Basically like 18 months like clockwork a new thing.
The way he puts it to me is like he can't think too much about the next projects while he's writing because he like, you know, he'll get distracted.
Sure.
So he writes, and then the next thing starts bubbling up and he'll have a notebook but like he knows what he wants the next few things to be.
That rolls.
And they're bubbling away. And then suddenly once this is done, he locks into the next thing and gets going again. And I assume he's got this deal at Warner Brothers now. So he'll be like, this is my thing and I want to get this person and off they'll go.
The deal is once again, he self-finances and Warner Brothers is committed to negative pickup once the production is done. Which is to say they basically function as totally independent, self-financed productions that Warner Brothers has promised they will buy the minute it stops being an independent production.
And like I talked to Michael DeLuca, which was kind of a cool movie nerd moment for me. Just like this is the guy who fucking made Boogie Nights happen and shit. You know, and
wrote fucking In the Mouth of Madness.
Yes, and has a ton of, you know,
got a blowjob on a couch.
Well,
at a party in front of some people. It's kind of a notorious story. Anyway, go on.
That's what I was going to say. He's got a lot of Hollywood stories.
Yes.
And he was truly like, I was at New Line when The Sixth Sense came up.
Yeah.
And I wanted that script so goddamn bad. Like, I will never forget reading that spec script. Like, you know, when you got to the end and you were like, oh my God, you know, and like, then Disney got it and I was so upset. And I have wanted him ever since. Like,
I feel like the quote you got out of him in your piece was something like, you read a lot of great spec scripts, but there's only one Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
Like there was the feeling of like, I'm never going to have this moment again of just being like, who the fuck is this? And what is this script? And where did this come from?
One thing I want to bring up is going back to this whole, like, you find yourself rooting for and identifying with the protagonist.
Yeah.
I kind of don't like going to concerts.
I don't either.
I don't either.
I'm a wuss about it these days.
I was very locked into that part of the movie of like this environment.
I don't like crowds like that. And I'm all like,
you like going to the movies.
I love going to the movies.
That's not 20,000 people.
Yeah. There's also like, okay, I've only been to 2 big concerts.
Oh, you really have never liked
in your life
concerts.
In my life.
What were they?
I went to see Robin at Madison Square Garden.
That sounds fun.
Dancing with Yourself?
Yeah, it was a really fun night. Had a great time. And I went to see Paul McCartney at MetLife.
I was genuinely asking, did you dance with yourself at the Robin concert?
No, I danced with like 20,000 other people. And then on the subway platform afterwards,
dancing by.
People put the music on and we all were dancing. Sure. It was great.
Seeing Paul McCartney is kind of like, that's kind of like a lovely experience because like he goes forever and the crowd is multi-generational and it's not as hyped up.
The concert itself was wonderful.
Right.
And it was
you
like,
were at the fucking MetLife Stadium. That's a nightmare.
It was a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
We chose to drive there.
Well, that was a mistake.
Why did we do that?
I don't know.
For a concert that starts at 7 p.m., which means we tried to leave at 4:45 to beat the traffic getting out of Manhattan on a Friday. We witnessed an accident happen while getting into the Lincoln Tunnel.
Yeah.
Do you know how long it took us to get back to Brooklyn?
4 hours.
4 fucking hours.
David, well done.
Going to the MetLife is a crazy thing
Getting
to do.
home from a big concert is one of the most stressful, like leaving
Marie,
a concert is one of the most stressful experiences
before you
that I
even
can
shared that story, the analogy I was thinking of is going to a major concert at any venue of size, to me, is very similar to going to the airport.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I know why I'm doing this.
Look.
There is an ultimate thing here that I think is worth the effort. But God, am I stressed about getting there, getting in, making my way around, getting out.
Getting in is one thing.
If it's
getting out,
all of it.
Nightmare.
And I'm just
if it's at like the Barclays Center and it's like, okay, I'll take the subway, I'll be in a long line, sure, but it won't be so bad.
Sure.
If it's in like MetLife, which to be clear to your, in listeners, it's in New Jersey. Yeah. It's not even on a.
I don't know how the fuck we're going to do the World Cup.
Well, what do you mean we're going to do it? We don't have to. We don't have to go.
David, we didn't tell you. We actually did.
Wait, is Blank Check hosting the World Cup?
We are.
Bought the
Here.
This is the problem.
After
We don't even have windows.
March Madness, we are now in.
They made us a really good offer. By the way, we have a hell of a loan to pay off.
Sorry, you've missed a lot of stuff.
Okay, Ben, what's Be Pro concert? I feel like you were tearing your hair out. Listen to us whine.
Well, okay, first of all, you brought up Barclays. You go to sporting events.
Sure.
Those are big events with a lot of people.
Filled with hooligans.
True,
Yeah.
I do.
Hooliganism.
You can kind of get in and out pretty quick, and
there are no real fans who go to the Barclays Center. Let's be real.
Well, hey, actually, can I?
Some real fans of Avatar, and we went to see Turok the First
Well,
Flight.
we did do that.
I'll tell you that
Marie
much.
wasn't there for that, sadly.
Also, there were only 10 other people. In the
I go to and we went to a Nets game, the three of us, which was a little more the experience I have at a lot of Nets games where you're like, oh, people are just sort of here to have a good time. They don't really care. I went to a Liberty game recently.
Oh, was that crazy? They got that elephant who twerks.
Ellie is the coolest. Ellie, the mascot of the New York
Ellie?
Liberty.
David was blowing up the fucking blank dough text thread with shit about Ellie.
Dude, Ellie rocks. She does this dance where she comes out. Griff, you would love this. And she's got the dancers around her and she's an elephant.
No, you sent pics.
Where she stamps her feet and then everyone falls down like she's rocked, because she's so big.
And does everyone go along with it?
Yeah.
Wow.
It rocks. She's so cool. But no, I went to Liberty game and just generally, I was like, I don't think I've ever seen the Barclays Center this hyped. Like people
I
like
want to go to a Liberty game.
Screaming for this team who are really good.
Does Ellie like Twin Peaks The Return?
Yeah.
We maybe get her on one of those episodes?
Yeah, no, because normally like Nets, there are no real Brooklyn Nets fans.
Griff,
Come on.
you would love Ellie. She's doing bits. She has two handlers or people with her, and when like they were mad about a foul call, she started doing this thing where she was pretending to faint and they were like fanning her with like a big handkerchief. It was so funny.
Sounds fucking great. Tell me
She's
when
a
she has a
diva.
1 hour special and I don't have to watch fucking basketball to get to the Ellie bits.
Oh, I guess
Wow.
Griffin's a huge sexist.
Griffin hates women's sports.
He hates to see women succeed.
I notice I just said basketball.
Okay, Ellie's got some moves. I'm
Ellie
watching
rocks!
some footage.
My brother Jamesy had a fucking Space Jam CD-ROM that was similar to like NBA Jam or whatever, right?
Like a video game.
It was a CD-ROM game.
Sure.
It was played on the computer. We did not have a console in the home.
Sure.
And I was like, Space Jam video game, great, Looney Tunes. And then you watch it, and the game is mostly you just playing basketball as the Looney Tunes.
How dare a Space Jam game involve playing basketball?
But then if you play it during the halftime intermission, there were mini games where it's like Daffy's got to get the water bottle with Michael's special stuff in it.
So
and I'd be like,
your
okay,
time
you
to
take
shine.
That's the way you're describing Ellie feels like that. Like I
You're
just
like,
wait.
so you wake up and you're
and
like,
then I'd be like, okay, let me sit down now.
Do you know? I feel like I think I maybe like Trap more than you
It
because
did grow for me on a second.
I don't give movie star ratings on Letterboxd anymore because I don't want people to get
It's a
mad at
fool's
me.
errand. Yeah.
But I would have given it 3.5 stars and a heart, which I think
That's
in
where-
a way is
yeah.
like more you know that it's about pure pleasure for
That
me.
is exactly where I am right now.
Mhm.
I've turned heart or no heart into a binary. Do I like it? It's no longer like I need to love it or it needs to be great. And I basically give nothing a star rating because, and I saw this happen when you fucking logged Meet Joe Black, right?
Mm.
And I saw a bunch of people going like, wait, he put Meet Joe Black half a star higher than this? He put it only half a star below this?
I
And
love
it's
it when
like-
people do that. It makes me really happy.
But I'm like, any star rating I could give to Trap then becomes this thing that is always the M. Night argument of like, how can you forgive all of his sloppiness when other directors, you would rake them over the coals for doing the same thing? I agree. David's throwing up a middle finger.
Fuck you.
And I'm like,
I can do whatever I want.
Movies are judged on different terms relative to what they're trying to do.
My favorite thing, though, is people obsessing over my star ratings.
Glad you love it.
Because they'll be like, but I don't understand. He gave this 3.5 stars, but if you search in his archive, he gave this. I'm just like, relax.
Yeah.
I'm having fun.
Yeah.
I'm having a good time.
I think I would
4.5
have gone
stars
up
for Trap.
to 4.5 stars if
Trap is
Lady
kind of
Raven
incredible.
was Ellie the Elephant.
You know this Ellie the Elephant concert we're all at? It's actually a big Trap. So the plot of Trap.
Wait, yeah, I gotta also answer your
Maria,
question.
that's a very good point.
Oh yeah, about concerts.
Defending concerts.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
I've aged out, I would say, at this point of going to like festivals.
Oh God, yes.
But just to use
Oh,
the festival
God.
experience.
Festival, I would never do.
No.
I
I
did
never
that as a
would.
teenager.
Ben, do you go to the Warped Tour?
Yeah.
Ozfest?
Ugh.
Not Ozfest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
Bonnaroo a bunch of times.
Wow.
I went to Glastonbury. I went to the British ones.
Oh,
Went to
cool.
Reading.
I don't like all the mud.
No,
Isn't-
it's not a
isn't
good
the whole
vibe.
thing-
Like,
isn't the
nothing
whole thing
it
about
is
mud?
good.
It's porta potties,
Right.
and if the porta potties by like day 3 are really gnarly,
Yeah,
it's
everyone
shitting in the
sucks.
woods.
Yeah,
It's not
exactly.
good.
I do like about large concerts is that they are inside.
Yeah, exactly. There's a bathroom there.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: I got to see Beck, then
Sure.
Radiohead.
yeah,
back
no,
to back.
it was
Yeah,
that was the
you're-
cool shit.
You
Right.
get to just see. I got to see Mars Volta. I got to see
Eh.
so much incredible stuff. Hey,
All right.
in just 3 days, so many incredible bands and artists. It's just and yes, it's gross and there's people everywhere, but it's worth it if you really love seeing live music.
I think I had the stamina for that stuff as a teen, and I went to lots of shows. And right, there's just some point I hit that I think a lot of people hit in their 20s where you're kind of like, I don't really like the experience of
I hate
getting
standing.
there.
I don't like
right.
people.
And yes,
I'm a
occasionally
butcher.
you can. I'm just a
They're gonna
butcher.
track
I just want to
me.
check my
Gotta go to
murder
the
app.
bathroom to check
Can
my
I
murder
check my
app.
fucking murder
So
app?
hard to get to the
Can
bathroom
I
to
tell
open
you
your
guys
murder
something
app.
really gross?
Yeah.
I thought when we see him in the toilet stall,
Mhm.
I thought he was going to start jerking off.
That would have been the kind of thing that if M. Night Shyamalan did that, I would have been flabbergasted.
Yeah,
that is
same.
not his kind of
No,
material.
He's
it's
not a
not,
sexual
but-
filmmaker.
Not
But it would, I
especially.
feel
Huh.
like, I mean, this is the thing that does, not to get all like red letter media, but about like serial killers and movies.
Yeah.
The fact that it was like a man in the basement doesn't ring true to me.
Really? Oh, this didn't strike me as a sex thing. This is a control thing. He is happiest when he folds that napkin right. And when he looks at the guy in there, he's like, yeah, good.
Who are
He's
serial
there.
killer? Who are
Who are-
heterosexual serial killers who kill men?
I mean, it sounds like
Aren't
you're
there
more
like
of an expert
lots?
in this field than I am. But
Wait, what?
You're raising some interesting points.
Think about it.
No,
Look
I
it
can't
up.
think about it because I don't care about serial killers.
Well, this is why I am the merch guy.
Yep.
I just don't care, man. But like you're saying, like you're sort of your Dahmers, your Gacy's, your Bundys, they killed men, but there was a sexual
Bundy didn't
element
kill
to
guys.
it. Sure, okay. I
Bundy
mean,
killed
I'm just
women.
trying to think of,
Yeah.
you know,
There's your point is that there is often a sexually charged element
Correct.
with serial killers who
is it-
kill at scale.
But isn't it one of those things that when then you Google, Jesus, this wonderful Wikipedia article that I'm seeing was written by Marie Barty called List of Serial Killers by Number of Victims.
Yeah.
And then you're seeing this long list of names that you don't recognize. And then once in a while, you're like, oh, like the
Well, yeah,
BTK guy. I know him, right? But like largely it's other shit.
BTK mostly killed women, but
killed
he
women.
did kill, you know, like Zodiac, there are like guys or collateral damage,
Mhm.
but there is a psychosexual element that I'm just saying if Brian De Palma had made this movie, that would have been there. And because M. Night Shyamalan made it, this was a movie about how much he loves his daughter.
Look, this movie is getting a lot of Brian De Palma comparisons.
Sure.
Snake Eyes, I think, is
Yes,
an obvious
yes.
one.
Yeah.
Which is a fine comparison for critics to make. I'm not sure it's one that Shyamalan would be that interested
No.
by. They're just different guys working in some sort of similar fields. I will say, when I talked to Josh Hartnett, he said that he had a very specific serial killer in mind for his performance, but he would not tell me who because he didn't want to spoil the movie for me.
Interesting.
Now, my guess was possibly BTK in terms of like the family
compartmentalization,
man,
yeah.
right? Who once they show up one day, he's like, well, I see you found me. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I must have done something wrong finally. But
Mhm.
like, and his family are like, what? You know, like, well, no, he was really awful to them, but you know, still surprised. But I don't know if that was the case. But he said that he and Knight kind of fought over the direct inspiration.
Interesting.
And came to sort of an understanding of what this guy's deal was.
I'm not saying that all of the third act Shyamalan movies are going to have a similar level of like reclamation as full bore classics. But we've already brought up both Carpenter and De Palma, whose 80s were very similar in a certain way, where they made a lot of movies. Many of them successful, some of them unsuccessful. But like you read, and we did this with Carpenter, you read the critics at the time, and they were like kind of flummoxed. There was this feeling of like Halloween being his sixth sense, and people being like, why can't you go back to this? Why are you making trash? These movies are silly. These performances are overcranked. The plots are outlandish.
I mean, listen to our episodes. Yeah. We're right. It's like he was never greeted with open arms by critics.
No.
Like when his movies came out.
And then like through people watching the movies 5 times on TNT,
right,
you start to get onto the wavelength of like, this is his deliberate world he's building. This is what he likes to play in. And as you said, like my pushback on Carpenter as a comparison point for like choosing to go from highbrow to lowbrow is that like Shyamalan makes this movie that on paper, Sixth Sense is not an obvious Best Picture candidate. It comes out in August.
No, certainly
it's
not.
A huge hit.
Of course.
It basically kickstarts this wave that we've talked about with ARP. Like we were like trying to pin down, like, what is this wave of 2000s sort of like big budget, prestige, supernatural.
Like The Others.
Yeah, and What Lies Beneath and big movie stars where suddenly horror wasn't beneath these filmmakers, but only within a certain strip. You know, it was this kind of like haunted relationship kind of thing that people suddenly were willing to make, that were taken seriously by Oscars or making crazy amounts of money or whatever it is. And then like that sort of runs its course at the same time that people get tired of the fucking Shyamalan thing.
Yeah, like The Village obviously is when people get tired of it. That movie still does well, but that's when people turned on him.
But that is the movie where he's clearly like, I'm trying to elevate this to high art. This film is like very kind of precious in its construction and its style.
But what is the dominant genre, horror subgenre at the time? Is it torture porn and then found footage? And then...
I would say that stuff is just starting up when The Village, because The Village is 04 and Saw is 04, right there. You know, it's sort of like you're almost seeing like, you know,
by the time
Shyamalan's
he makes
business
the
go
Happening,
down.
and then the other
he makes
stuff
Happening
goes up.
4 years later, and that's almost a response to like, I need to make an R-rated movie.
Right. I mean, I feel like in The Village, it is. Well, that's a great question, actually. Like horror movies of the early 2000s.
But I think there's this big thing, and so much of the legacy of Shyamalan is the like Time magazine cover, him getting tagged with this like. He's the
like
next
J
Spielberg
horror coming up, and like slashers are kind of going down again.
There is this strategic decision when he makes The Visit of like, I'm just making a fun little nasty movie. And even a thing we talked about on our Happening episode was when he was promoting The Happening, he was like, look, my goal was to make the greatest B movie of all time, and I did it. Like there was an arrogance to him sort of presenting it as, I'm trying to make a movie that's trashy, but I'm making it for $80 million.
I think we talk about that on that episode too, because that's sort of, it's like the George Lucas thing where they're like, well, I don't care if you didn't like it because it's not meant for you. You know, it's meant to be fun. It's meant to be silly. It's meant to be for kids. It's meant to be a B movie. It's
versus he made the strategic pivot of like, I'm choosing to recalibrate the way people think of me. I'm going to continue to stay in this sort of silo and pitch movies that come out like, you know, like Carpenter was always unpretentious about how he viewed his career and didn't want to go chasing the obvious kind of like, you know, he's thrown so many strays at like Cronenberg, like, you know, chasing after some sense of like
art highfalutin
right.
art.
He's just like, I just like making genre movies.
He actually just likes playing Halo and fucking smoking blunts. But
he never had the moment that Shyamalan did where people are like, are you the greatest storyteller in Hollywood right now?
But here's the other difference. Now Shyamalan is like, well, what I want to do is make original, non-IP grounded, sort of somewhat star-driven, but not crazily genre films,
clean premise,
largely presented kind of for adults with like a big premise.
Yeah.
And Hollywood's like, that's interesting. Did we used to make those?
Yes.
No, did we ever offer those to audiences? And the audience is just like, yes, food, please, please, give me. You know, like he is now this like savior of cinema just because he's like, yeah, I want to not make superhero movies and have them be in theaters.
My dad was like, I guess the Shyamalan movie isn't connecting after the weekend box office. And I was like, he's already basically...
He's in the black.
Yeah.
That's how he put it to me. He's like, first weekend, I'm in the black.
He's made his model in a way where it's like...
And then the rest of the money, you know, goes right back to Blinding Edge, basically.
Right. Yeah, it's like, you know, the range of like this movie's going to open somewhere between 17 and 22. And it's like, if it opened to 22, people would have been happier in his camp.
Sure.
But that movie opening at 17 is like fucking
It's
work.
going to make its money back.
Yeah, it's fucking, it's already good. Yeah.
I mean, I know we've already been going for a while, but I do want to talk about
Worse than you would think,
Allison
actually.
Pill.
I want to talk about Allison Pill a lot,
Yes,
and
we
what I
haven't
think is a
talked about her.
phenomenal
Okay,
performance.
before we do, let's move through Trap a little linearly,
Okay.
just so we don't miss anything. Okay, so obviously, right, the first chunk of the movie, him with Riley
He's
in the
acting like a
car,
doofus.
getting there. Right,
Right.
he's silly dad. Well, what do the
What's
kids say
crispy?
now? What a Chris? Right, his kid is. It's kind of an amazing performance because you can really tell, like, she's very sincere about Lady Raven.
Mhm.
It's that perfect age thing too, right? Like, what is she supposed to be, like 12 or whatever? Of like, she's a little shy about her passions, but also very sincere in them,
Yes.
right? And that whatever drama happened at school, her being excluded on social media or what, right, like that shit,
Mhm.
has wounded her so deeply.
Yes.
But we're moving on. Like, it's not the end of the world.
Kind
blah,
of
blah,
classical,
blah.
like the group of girls just decided they don't like you anymore.
And then they all
thing.
post that they're hanging out and
Right.
she can see it or
Yeah.
whatever. So I feel like the only real thing in the first few minutes, right, is you just note how meticulous Cooper is with the napkins and the food and concert starts. Cooper gets up from his seat from this concert, like 14 times? How many? He's always fucking like, hey, I forgot one more thing. I gotta go again.
Yeah,
Left my Visa card with the merch guy.
But yeah, like, and first he goes to the bathroom, he sees that vision of his mother, and checks the phone. And then he takes her to the merch stand, and then he learns the butcher thing. It takes a little while.
Correct.
Right? Like,
right. And then
he encounters the mom of
Right.
the other girls. There's
Yes.
drama with Riley and her school friends where they've kind of excluded her
face to face with those girls.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. We never see him. Right. Yeah.
And there's some moment where he goes like, she's like, I made friends with the girl sitting next to me. Like he feels a sense of comfort in that.
Yes. Right. Oh, one little moment in this part that we're talking about that I think is so funny is when he pushes the drunk girl down the stairs.
Twice in this movie, there is a perfectly placed woman close to fainting.
Yes.
Or passing out.
Strung out in some way.
Right.
Yes.
Which,
and it's just like, great.
I mean, also, the Lady Raven concert in the middle of the day doesn't seem like the kind of concert you get fucked up during.
Well,
but
one person decided to.
I mean, this is the kind of
There's
shit.
always one person that gets too fucked up at a
especially at a Lady Raven concert.
But this is the shit, and I'm not gonna like fight back against this where people go like, this movie is bad and you cannot convince me it's not bad. Because this makes no sense.
Yeah, but it
there
makes
are
no sense.
20
But I
things
also,
in this movie that make no sense, and I don't care.
I laugh and I go, "Ha, funny. Okay, so let's get back to the action."
Here's another one. There's like at some point when the daughter goes out with him and he's doing the laps, right? And she's like, "Now's a good time because it's the intermission."
Yeah,
and we're like, "There's no fucking intermission at concerts." Like,
maybe
what?
There should be.
But I also was like,
be nice.
Watching it the second time, I'm like, that line could be like, oh yeah, this is where they let the dancers do the solo and she changes outfits. I'm cool to do a lap now. Like,
right.
You could explain why it's the part she doesn't care about, but to act like it's a Broadway show is so weird.
I obviously, my fundamental thing is like, I don't care. I know you need
That's my response
ways
as well.
to kind of, to shift the
He's
story
cutting this thing to the bone.
Right.
He's just trying to get the
I get
information
it.
across.
It's
Also,
fine.
hey, maybe he's like me in that he hates concerts. He doesn't go to
making
them,
it up.
and
It's like,
he's
let me
just
get out of
making
these.
it up.
He's just making it up.
But yeah, so the first chunk is him with his daughter. What, Ben, you're mad?
No. I'm sort of sighing to myself because I find people that go into watching movies or just any kind of like storytelling and they're just like, that's not fucking real. That would never fucking happen. It's like, how can you enjoy anything?
I would agree.
If you go in with that attitude, it's so boring. I find it so boring to be that kind of person.
Ben just reading from my manifesto, right? I love this. You're speaking my heart.
It's like, and I have had people text me, have you seen it yet?
He's gesturing to his phone.
And I've been like waiting to get back to them because like their take was just basically like, was he playing a fucking joke on us? Like,
yes.
Am I supposed to believe this? I'm like, it's a fucking story. And it's a silly little movie that's entertaining.
There were some tweets that were like, "This is the worst movie I've seen all 37 years of my life," and I'm like,
interesting.
Congrats on seeing your first movie.
That
Is
is
my response
crazy.
to that.
Because there's the level of craft and pleasure in this film that
It can't all be Harold and the Purple
So
Crayon.
here's a moment I put a pin in earlier, right? Later in the film, not to jump ahead, but there's when we see the footage of him pulling the guy into the van.
Yeah.
When we saw it opening night,
Yeah.
it got a huge laugh from the audience. There's something kind of comical of the timing. There's a little bit of a like yoink to how quickly the guy disappears.
I think it's a deliberate humor there.
But there is as someone who spent years doing wildly unsuccessful comedy and for audiences that often didn't really want to be there in bar basements and such, right? And Ben, I know you can relate to this as well. At certain points, you start to like be able to catalog the different types of laughs that you can feel of like, that's the good kind of laugh. That's the bad kind of laugh. Yeah. That's like the right kind of silence if they're paying attention. That's the silence of them being bored. And I'm always feeling that very acutely when I watch Shyamalan movies of like, how much does the audience seem to be on his side versus like responding as if they're on their own conversation?
Right.
And it felt like the tenor of the laugh to that was them being like, this movie's silly. We're supposed to take this seriously. This is goofy. This assumption that he's trying to do something and failing, and I'm laughing, and it's not.
Clearly, they weren't paying attention to all of his social media.
Yes.
Where he said, I was having so much fun writing this. I was giggling to myself. I'm a little stinker.
When Ben and I watched it last night, that moment played to dead silence, and I found it very eerie.
Yeah, no,
it felt
means a lot.
Actually scary, and no one responded to it at all. Now, there were other things people laughed at in a way last night that felt like, you think you're better than the movie.
Sure,
this is a sort of judgmental laugh.
Right. Yeah.
But I think back to Longlegs, a film that I think is tremendously good.
What if a man had long legs?
Oh, wow. I completely disagree with you there.
So many do.
Yeah, long legs.
It has
good.
become very divisive and has had like a rapid, almost M. Night cycle. And
so similar to M. Night, and just people being like, fuck off with this.
Yes.
Like unconvincing in every way. Why this? Why this?
And so much of it is too that like that movie had this incredible, very short hype cycle in a way. There's all this elusive marketing, but then no one really sees it until like 2 weeks before it comes out, and it had just enough time to crest and have the surprise opening weekend. It has held surprisingly
incredibly well. It's making $70 million. Like
it's a
more
long legged
than
hit.
Furiosa.
Yes.
Or Furiosa.
Yeah.
Or
Furiosa. I was talking to a friend of mine who saw Longlegs and was like, how can you say...
Call the cops.
I'm sorry.
He's no good. Get that guy to jail.
A friend of mine who was visited by Longlegs, who was like, how can you think that's good? Like the same thing you're saying of like, that is objectively bad. And his proof was, he was like, when Nicolas Cage came on screen, the audience started laughing.
Right.
And my response was, I think that's a feature, not a bug. And part of it is... And I'm not saying that film is beyond criticism, right? But like that movie had this hype cycle of those last 2 weeks of Breathless, like, holy shit, is this thing a miracle? Was also coated with people like you. And I know you didn't write the headline that they assigned to your review was like, is this the scariest shit of all time? There was suddenly this pressure on the movie to be like, is this the most terrifying fucking thing you'll ever see? And then audiences sat there, and then everything in the movie that was kind of weird or goofy or silly started to be like, what is this? I thought we entered into an agreement that you are going to scare me. And M. Night has always had that thing, I would say past Unbreakable, where people are like, or past Signs.
Unbreakable.
Where people are like, didn't we have an agreement to how this worked? The type of movie you made, the way it made us feel, we all shook hands and walked away.
Sure.
And when you try weird shit like this, people don't know where they're like, if I'm supposed to be scared, then why are you putting silly shit in here?
I want to give Marie the chance to diss
Please.
long legs because I know not everybody likes long
The legs were too long, in your opinion.
It could have been longer, actually.
I think I like movies that...
Where legs are short.
Where legs are short, like mine. I have short legs.
Sure. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Stubby
Yes.
legs. You want
Stubby
this?
little
Oz
legs.
Perkins is stubby legs.
The Smurfs.
Also, I'm noticing the Balencies
Yeah.
pop off.
But now people are going to get mad at me because I'm wearing Balenciaga sneakers to record Blank Check.
You know what? Fuck them.
Well.
And Ben, you didn't call out my sneakers.
What are those?
Kirkland signature.
He got them at
Did you buy
Costco.
shoes at
Of course he
Costco?
did.
Branded. I didn't just buy them. I bought them because
Costco sold houses.
they got
he
that
would buy
Kirkland
one.
signature on the fuck. That is true.
Wow. Okay, so long legs. I like when movies, and I think Trap does do this, even though it has a silly button at the end.
Mhm.
I think Josh Hartnett at the end is scary.
Yeah, I agree.
So I like movies that are silly and then end scary. Longlegs is the inverse. Longlegs started scary for me and then ended silly as hell. And that is not the way that I like to experience movies.
But I also watched
I
it.
disagree with you.
I saw it at a showing where the audience was pin drop silent the entire time. And I walked out and I had a feeling that I'm sure I've had it since, but the last time I remember feeling this acutely was seeing The Sixth Sense for the first time, where I was like,
okay, no.
This has momentarily rewired my perception of reality and left me on edge.
Marie's dead.
I'm dead. You
I'm not
killed me
choked.
with that.
Here's what I'm saying. I'm saying
People
Sixth Sense-
compared it to the fucking Silence of the Lambs.
It's obviously not as
Now
good as
you're
Silence of the
talking
Fighting
about
that comparison.
now I know, but negatively, and now you're like, oh, and the last time I felt that way was the first time I saw it.
I'm
The
not saying
Sixth
at the
All
level
right,
of
everyone
quality.
relax.
I'm saying,
Everyone
Let's move on to
relax.
Trap.
Here's what I'm saying, and this all goes back to Shyamalan, right? When I go to the bathroom in the middle of The Sixth Sense, at that point I'm fucking 10, right? I remember going to the bathroom in the middle of the movie.
Were you checking your serial killer app on your phone?
Yeah, of course.
Actually, I have to go to the bathroom.
Okay.
And then I was genuinely scared of ghosts. I went to this bathroom and I was like, is the fucking thermostat going to drop? And I walk out of Longlegs and I got an email from my grandmother that was incoherent because she's not good at emailing. But I read it and I suddenly was like, is my grandmother possessed? Like I
think
stayed
that says
in the
more
bubble
about
of it.
Ruda than it does
Well, it says
about
a lot
Longlegs.
about Ruda. But I'm saying that sort of bubble. Now, Jordan Peele is this one guy, and I wonder if it is because he has a background in comedy and then made this pivot where I do feel like audiences accept him doing both. And he has this quote that I've heard recently that I find really interesting where he's like, the only difference between comedy and horror is music. It's the same sort of like manipulation of tension, right? And like demanding a physiological response out of audiences and getting into this very clear like back and forth interplay that tends to play better with a crowd. But so much of it is tone setting and letting them know like which parts are supposed to scare you and which parts are supposed to make you laugh. And when those two things aren't delineated, I think audiences get super fucking confused. And you can argue that's proof that a movie doesn't work. You can say it's misreading, whatever it is. But I do think that's what so much of this boils down to. Sure. And like Get Out, over time, it has sort of come out that when they shot it, it was intended to be more of a comedy. He was sort of like, if Blumhouse wants me to make something that's a little more satirical.
Right.
And then as they were in post, they were like, can we commit harder to the horror of this? You feel the Laurel Howley character, who's really good in that movie, being a vestige of that film being like maybe all at that tone.
He's 100% funny and good in that movie, but it's right. It's so easy to just lift him out of that movie in a way.
And he figured out how to balance it. And then Us and, Nope are doing that intentionally and with control from the outset, where it's like you can have a movie have like the monkey scene, which is genuinely terrifying, and also have Stephen Young give the Chris Kattan monologue about the same thing, right? Which is hysterical, and the audience is like,
but unsettling.
Yeah, connected to both.
Yeah, that scene's very creepy.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
just think Jordan Peele is better.
I agree with you. But I'm like, all of this, it's just been on my mind recently of these lines of like, what level of comedy people allow to coexist in horror movies. And I also think about like the rabid subculture of like horror conventions and stuff, right? Where the guy who is like the 8th lead in like Friday the 13th Part 4 is a superstar at this one hotel ballroom for a weekend.
Right.
And part of it is like giving a performance that most people would maybe say is bad. Where part of what like these horror fans covet are these like weird line readings, not even from the icons, you know, the mascots of horror.
No, you're right. I mean, the thing of like, oh, you did the sleeping bag kill. I love you for that. Yes, yeah.
But that they'll like quote like not just lines, but inflections of like, oh no, he's coming for me. And you're like, it's that guy. When he was 19, he said that line that way. And he had a look.
What a weird world.
You know, and people at the time might have been like, this movie's dumb and stupid and goofy. And then there's some weird power to like that balance of the goofiness with the primal terror that sometimes takes longer to balance out.
Trap.
And I can't believe you actually went to the bathroom. I thought you were going to do a bit.
We've been podcasting for 2 hours.
Yeah, I had to pee.
In Trap, the first chunk is him learning. And then The next
Maybe
chunk
the bit hasn't revealed itself yet.
is we're basically watching Cooper kind of case the joint. He realizes now what's going on, and so he steals a pass to get backstage, to not get backstage, to get in, the guts
employees
of the building.
only area.
And
He gets the walkie-talkie. They're in his ear. He knows what they're saying.
We're watching him build a
He
map
gives
of the place.
The SWAT cops sugar for their coffee.
Yes.
A moment I thought was so key is when he is standing in front of the fire alarm and he's listening to Haley Mills' monologue, and she says he's probably going to do something like, and I forget what the first thing she says is, but he's undeterred. And then she says fire alarm, and he turns around, and it almost feels like M. Night being like, people expect a twist ending out of me every time. They're trying to outgame me, and I'm stuck,
So what are some other things?
He makes the canola bomb. He steals the API.
That was fun.
He gets the wallet.
The oil bomb.
Such a good moment on the roof where they're like, "What's your pass?"
And
he's
him
just
doing
like,
I'm sorry, like my
so
coworker just got
out.
like exploded oil all over her face,
but
and
confidently reaches into a pocket, finds the wallet, which is what he was hoping for, and finds that the card is in the wallet, which is what he was hoping for. But you see zero hesitation in those first two moves. He's like, I'm gonna fucking confidence my way through this. And hope that it pays off.
And it's how obviously he's done what he's been doing, which is
what
basically
Alison Hill
like
says.
right. And he's like a fire marshal or a fire inspector or whatever, and he like cases empty houses that are like unused because of fire problems. And
what was B2K's job? Installed security system.
Well.
So then he realizes that one lucky girl gets to go on stage with Lady Raven at every concert and gets to go backstage afterward.
Which feels kind of like a riff on the Bieber One Less Lonely Girl thing.
Sure.
Dream Girl.
Like it's a classic concert thing, though, right? Like, oh, you're going to get to go on stage and dance with Bruce Springsteen.
We all know they pick someone and they have to do the one
Incredible Shyamalan cameo.
One of my favorites of his cameos. He explains what an uncle is.
Proud uncle.
Yeah. Like, obviously, Shyamalan has gone from, I'm putting myself in my movies as a Hitchcockian nod to, my forebears, to, I'm casting myself as the man who writes the book that changes the world. Back to now him being like, I'm having fun. Like, his cameo in Old is so good, right? Remember that one? That's really delightful.
The best one for me still. But
this one is similar, where he's just like, I'm behind the scenes. I'm this guy who's,
it's like, you must be really proud. And he's like, well, yeah, but she's my sister's kid. Right. I'm her brother of the mother. I'm her uncle. Like, as you said, he does basically
explain what an uncle is.
Yes. And as if you were reading a picture book to a child that explains a family tree.
Your uncle is. You're right. But Hartnett obviously locks right in and gets his kid picked as the dream girl by pretending that she has recovered from leukemia and has a tragic backstory.
And he's doing that as means to an end. And the moment of panic when the mask comes down, as I was saying, is him being like, have I done something that will harm my daughter in the process? And the relief he feels when she's good on stage.
Right. Is sort of, he's pushing it and he knows he's pushing it. Like, he wants out, but he does want to get out clean without his kid figuring it out. Yeah. And he's,
One little moment I want to touch upon before we skip over it is just when the rapper comes out of the trap door and he goes, "Hey, you want to go check that out?
That's great.
That's kind of cool." And she's like, "Dad,
why would we go
in costumes down there?"
Wouldn't it be like a funny bit?
I think that's so funny.
It does feel like something you would say to your fiance at a concert.
Right. Hey, trap door.
Something I might consider.
The rapper Parker Wayne, played by Russ.
Oh, of course.
Is the name of the performer.
Mm-hmm.
And,
I like how dorky that guy looks.
Yes.
And then when the daughter sees him backstage and she's like, oh my God.
She like kind of faints a little bit.
Yeah. She jokingly faints into Hartnett's
so she gets
stoic elm tree body.
He's got a big
climb him like a
bod.
fucking tree.
Yeah.
So they get backstage, and this is when I am kind of at sea. I'm kind of like, I figured this whole movie was going to be in here.
Yeah.
Maybe until the last 10 minutes.
Right.
Instead, we're kind of halfway into the movie and it feels like we're wrapping up on the arena.
Willems had told me that he knew someone who lives in the Philly area who got invited to a test screening.
His uncle got a Nintendo 64.
Right.
Wait, but how is he his uncle?
Yeah,
His
explain
mom's
this to me.
brother.
Yeah. Break it down.
Right.
Okay,
they were once both babies born to the same parent. They
he
grew
knew
up.
Someone
who saw a test screening.
Uh-huh.
And as someone very invested in the Hartnett career, asked him,
tell me everything.
Right. And they said, no spoilers. The thing I was kind of surprised by was how much of it is on Shyamalan's daughter. And he was like, well, yeah, the whole thing's at the concert, right? He was like, third act, she's kind of a dramatic center point. So I knew that going in, and I'm watching it the whole time going, I don't understand how this movie could possibly get to the point where it's hinging on her dramatically, where it doesn't just have to be on stage performance.
And it is wonderful. You talk about all the craft of it, like that we're always with Hartnett. But yes, we are learning that she actively knows about the sting operation.
Yes.
And participated in it, basically held the concert to get it.
Surprise afternoon.
It's not just, hey, can we do this at your concert? Right. Can we create a Lady Raven concert around this idea?
She's part of it.
And she's into it. And not only that, she knows the profile of the guy.
Yes.
Haley Mills has filled her in.
And this incredible moment where Hartnett's like, because first he was like, hey, we don't have to go back through the crowd. Can we leave from out here?
And they're like, yeah, if you just check in with our serial killer team over here.
Right.
Procedure. No big deal. You'll be right through.
There's also a great moment when Shyamalan gives them the pass and is bringing them up to the stage, and they're like 4 armed guards, and they go like, excuse me, no one's allowed past here without like a security check. And Shyamalan goes like, hold on, and walks up to the guy and whispers in his ear for like 40 seconds.
Right.
And you're literally watching a Shyamalan hand wave happen in real time.
Right.
But it's also him just being like, look, she has cancer, this and that. I'm going to explain to you why we don't have time for this plot beat, basically. But yes.
He cannot get out. So he plays the ace of spades, like the last card he has.
You got one quick other detail is I love that like one of the identifying features is that they can tell he has this like stupid little tattoo
of an animal.
He has, that is one of his
and so
only
he puts
tells.
like a slap bracelet.
Let's also call out one of the things that makes people go insane over this movie, which I agree is insane and is like from the mind of M. Night Shyamalan. Like, how does he think things work these days? But that the thing they've built the trap around was that they found a receipt for tickets to the concert.
Right.
Where you're like, who's carrying a paper receipt?
Dads.
That's dad behavior.
That's major dad energy.
You know what? My father certainly would print out tickets and receipts 5 times.
It's probably the last generation that would do that, but I can buy it.
Also, I don't know. You don't love to leave a paper trail.
You also find
or like a credit card trail, you know? Maybe he walked up to the box office.
But you also find out later it was placed.
Yes.
Well, correct.
His wife did throw him under the bus. But anyway, he does, to my total surprise, kind of the biggest twist in the movie in a way, is that he then marches up to Lady Raven and is like, hello, I am the butcher. Right. You've been looking for me, and here is a man I can kill at the drop of a hat if you tell anyone.
He's like, hey,
now
can I just talk to you for 1 second?
Right,
she's like, sure. He goes in and he gives her a monologue about carbon monoxide.
It's so fucking creepy.
And then goes like, anyway, so it is me. I'm the killer. How are we going to do this?
Right. We're getting out of here in your limo, and we are not getting serial killer checked by those dastardly serial killer checkers.
Yeah.
And
it's one of those exciting moments where you're like,
I don't know what
happens. There's 30 minutes left in the movie.
Right.
I don't know what could possibly happen at this point.
And then, yes, we do kind of switch to Lady Raven. They're all together.
Right.
But now we have this crazy uncomfortable thing where she doesn't want the daughter to know, maybe doesn't know the daughter, if the daughter knows or not, right? You know, they're like all together.
I'm also, in the opening credits, the reaction you had to Haley Mills, I see Allison Pill's name, an actor I love.
Oh, I do too, but I love Allison Pill.
Chekhov's
I'm
pill
waiting for her.
Same, I'm going, where could she possibly fit into this? What type of role could exist in this movie that is big enough that hasn't been revealed yet?
And then, of course, they get home, and she is his loving wife. Her name is Rachel. And I feel like Lady Raven is where the audience is, where she, the whole time, she's like, does she know?
Correct.
Does the kid know?
Yes.
Who knows and who doesn't know, right? Like, what's the balance here?
That was going to be the twist
when
Lady
maybe the
Raven
wife knows.
Is locked in the bathroom, and then she comes out, and it's going to be the wife being like,
hello,
I'm Mrs. Butcher.
Right. Yes. And honestly, my favorite, so Salika does have these massive eyes, and I do feel like that's her biggest asset. But my favorite moment is when she just starts playing the piano, because kind of that's the thing she's the best at anyway, as like a power move. Like that just worked for me a little better than her other power move moment when she's in the car with him and starts throwing mommy stuff at him.
Sure.
I like the idea of doing that to throw him off balance. I think she just doesn't quite sell the intensity of it.
I couldn't even tell if that was
yeah.
real or if he was imagining it.
I think
it's real, but
it's
it was
real.
so
No, it's real.
it was so
But she's
weird.
using what she
awkward.
has, which
Right.
is just the information they gave.
But I mean, I really like that his reaction. Like, yeah, bringing up my mom. Not gonna bother me. I'm normal. I'm feeling fine. I'm doing my serial killer thing.
But this kind of control freak serial killer, Marie's going to the bathroom to check her murder
she's doing it
basement.
silently.
This kind of control freak serial killer, there is the sort of psychology of the thing that wounds them the most is making them feel dumb, right? That their like sense of pride comes from like, and I did it perfectly, and I lined it up,
Control.
and none of the clues, and her being able to be like, hey, here's like a dumb stereotype. They all have dark cars because it makes it look more clean. He hates that he could be seen as that predictable.
Exactly, that they would know that about him simply by guessing, essentially,
Right.
at his behavior.
Right. So it does kind of put him at like unease
Yeah,
to
he's
just have someone
off-kilter.
read him.
Whereas, like, a moment that I love in Hartnett's performance and in the script is where he's like, I'm putting my hand on your shoulder, my fingers on your shoulder,
Yes.
and they are not coming off your shoulder until you're where I want you to be.
Yes.
I've never seen anything like that. It's
No.
such a great expression of like the control and power he wants to exert.
There's also in that walk he does with her, he
Mhm.
goes into his like fucking the garage, the storage closet or
Yes.
wherever, where he has a secret little magnet like wall reveal thing. But there are like 3 brooms on the wall
Right.
that are like on wall mounted like hooks or hangers or whatever. And when he opens the door and walks through, he knocks one of them down onto the floor.
Mm.
And then he readjusts the second one that he didn't knock down to make it more precise. And I'm like, that absolutely has to be a take where that was a mistake, where he wasn't supposed to knock them over. He
And
was
that's
just
a choice
supposed to
he
finesse
made.
them.
Right.
And it would be too hard in that moment to figure out how to kneel down and pick up the broom without taking your hand off the shoulder. But in real time, it's him being like, okay, I'm fucking up order and trying to maintain it at this, like
you can feel he's losing the thread a
He's
little
losing
bit.
it.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, her biggest thing obviously is, fuck it, I'm gonna go on IG Live. I'm gonna get in this bathroom.
anyone
her
know a
superpower is
park
fame. Yeah.
with a busted lion statue,
that's
a
also
blue door.
The move of her playing the piano at the house
Yep.
is like her superpower she has in this setting is the energy she is able to wield from doing shit.
And the fact that his daughter is so obsessed
Correct.
with her and he doesn't want to mess with that.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you guys
That's really
familiar with like the Lady Gaga as a detective memes?
No.
So
Rings a vague bell. Let's see.
Are you familiar with Lady Gaga as Harley
Well, isn't-
Quinn and Joker Folie à Deux coming
Please.
later this year to
Isn't there
this feed?
something?
Please.
Isn't there something she said about like she looked into the evidence of
Yes.
January 6th
So
or
when
something?
she sang,
Jesus
she's sang
Christ.
at the Biden inauguration.
Just fucking slamming
She,
computer shut.
and she was like going to the Capitol while she was there to to sing. She was like, I'm also going to investigate. And so now it's become a thing where like people are like, Gaga's on the case.
Well, Lady
Feel
Raven is on the case.
Far more
I've-
safe
yeah.
now.
She does. And she does. She wants to, of course, remove his point of leverage, which is this guy, and she succeeds.
Mhm.
They do rescue the guy in the basement.
Yeah.
And then Cooper basically goes to the next stage where he's like, well, I've locked my family upstairs. I'll hopefully explain that away later. We don't really know what's happened to them, which is really unsettling.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
thought that
I didn't know what it
expecting
was.
bad
Like, did
stuff.
they run away? Did he kill them? Right.
Right.
Or did he lock them away? Or did they find out? We don't know.
Yes.
Like the movie is like, well, we got to keep going. Now
Well,
they're
he
in the
says
car.
thing in the car
Yeah.
where but he sees when the garage door comes up, they're standing in front of the car.
Yes.
Like they're challenging
Right.
him. If you try to escape, you're going to have to hit us. Right?
Right.
And then he says something to the effect of like, locked the door, windows close to the tree branch, could have gotten down,
Mhm.
never viewed from that vantage point before.
That was such
It's
a funny
so good
line.
that he's never cased his own house.
Yeah.
Right.
Because he's always had.
Keep the lives
The
separate, don't let them touch.
Yes.
The
and
peas
you
can't
gotta
touch
keep
the
them
mashed
separated.
potatoes.
A thing you
As the
couldn't
offspring
possibly
told us.
relate to.
I was thinking about you a lot.
Go on.
as a father of a daughter
Mhm.
who is, constantly compartmentalizing and keeping your family
I am not a serial killer, to be clear.
away from this like
Serial
twisted,
killer.
fucked up thing you do, which is record
Podcasting.
this podcast.
Disgusting. Wait, what did Ben say?
I said, why are your fingers crossed?
There is something I need to bring up.
Please.
So we do record this show in a no ventilation, windowless room.
A bit of a
How
butcher
dare
station.
you? We have an AC unit that usually works. And one other thing.
Okay.
Central air.
I'm just saying, if you put carbon monoxide through that vent
We
right
could
there,
kill anyone we wanted so quickly.
but also there are a bunch of chains that are just in the corner.
Yeah.
of
Look,
the
I think that comes
studio.
up on a later episode. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But Ben
Yeah.
does have a chain display up right now.
And-
He's got a rusty pipe functioning as like a hanger for
Yeah,
multiple chains.
I
It's
did
a
it- I-
chain display.
It's a chain display.
That's how it's been described to me. And it was meant for his home, but weirdly his fiance objected.
She said absolutely not.
Oh,
That would be
interesting.
so funny if like the FBI called us and they're like, we're so close to, we think we've identified the deadliest serial killer working today.
the peeper.
And it turns out, it turns out that he's a major blankie. We've tracked his activity on r/blankies and we're like, really? And they're like, oh yeah, we check that all the time for potential serial killers. Can you book them as a guest on the show? It's a trap. You're right. It'd be easy to pump poison into this room.
I just think, like, if
If the FBI asked us to.
if one of us were to be a serial killer,
And we know who it would be.
He's pointing at me. What the fuck? Why would it be me? I am the most well-adjusted of you four.
That is not true.
Yes, it is.
We're crazy.
Griffin,
We're
do not.
crazy in the streets, normal in the sheets.
Okay. Well,
That's I don't know if I worded that
Yeah,
correctly.
I'm like,
yeah.
huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's not hard for me to dodge you guys being like, you're actually the crazy one, and then you guys just like run into a wall.
Yeah, on microphone.
What happens? Basically, Cooper goes to a vacant house, right? Well, no. First, he gets in the car with Lady Raven,
Yes.
and then gets in the limo, or
Well,
is it
he takes over her limo driver.
Right.
I forget how he does
Right.
the swap of getting the. What happens is he lets Lady Raven go.
Yes.
Right.
Then they sort of case the house. Then you see him arranging everything in the house. He cleans up before the FBI are going to raid it. They're like ready for a standoff.
Right.
And he like takes everything out of the cupboard
Yes.
and lines it up perfectly and reveals the trap with the tunnel to the house to make them think that he escaped through that.
Well, you don't even see that. It's more like you see him sort of taking stuff out of the closet.
Yeah, I was
Right.
like,
They
what's he
come
doing?
in,
Right.
Yeah.
and it's revealed that he has built a secret escape.
Right. He's got a tunnel out.
No, the escape's right, but they assume like, well, let's follow the escape. And somehow he has gotten a SWAT uniform.
He doubles back or whatever, right?
Right.
And he knocks out a SWAT guy, one assumes, or something. I don't
Right.
know. Like, and he gets a SWAT uniform.
That's when Allison Pill has the conversation with Haley Mills,
Yes.
where it's like, he's gone, we're going to find him.
Sorry.
Right.
You know.
And Allison Pill has this incredible, it is all 1-2 shot held in profile of watching this woman's life crumble, asking like, what is your read on these people?
Right.
And she says the whole thing of like, they're often this kind of child who like seem normal to everyone else, and only a parent is the kind of person who could pick up on something being a little bit odd.
And you're
Right.
seeing pictures of them as a family.
Yeah. Their wedding
It's
day,
really
them on
creepy.
vacation, him with the babies, like
Yeah.
all this shit.
He is, as far as we can tell, largely quote unquote normal.
Yes.
And then once in a while, he puts someone in an unused. The houses aren't even being used. I actually think he's a hero. He's using homes.
I want to remind people, David was saying that he was the normal, well-adjusted
Yeah.
one and not the one who should be compared to a murderer.
Like
but the point
the
in this
sense is
scene,
the butcher has maybe killed like a dozen people or something.
Sure.
Like that he,
12.
yeah, like that he's done.
a
a
butcher's
classic
dozen.
butcher's dozen.
that
Yeah.
would be.
But
12,
in this
sure.
scene, you're watching Allison Pill and you're like, this is a very good
Baker's
performance
Dozen is 13. Yes.
of...
Yeah, Pill, amazing. We love Allison Pill. To get back to his,
Yeah.
This is a
Marie shouting
performance
that out.
of a woman in real time trying to make sense of how she couldn't know the man she spent her life with, right? That's how the scene reads the first time.
Right.
Right.
And you're like, this is really someone looking at these photos going like, he seemed normal.
And you're thinking that's why you have Pill.
Yeah.
Sure. Overqualified for a small part, but you need her for that moment.
Correct.
Great. Movie's about to be over, right?
Right.
Not quite.
Hartnett's driving the limo.
And gets caught again.
Yes. Ties her up.
Right. Weasels
Right.
out of through the crowd again. Like
Yes.
they're like, we've definitely got him in the
gets
limo.
away wearing a disguise of Lady Raven merch.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Lady Raven finds the family, the guy that she saved from the
Right.
basement.
They're
hugs
nice
him.
to her. That's
That loop
Lady
is
Raven's
closed.
bye-bye.
That's the
Right.
end of
In my
Lady
head
Raven.
canon, they got together afterwards.
Would be nice.
Hmm.
They're trauma bonded.
Kind of a meet cute.
It's
Wow.
kind of a meet cute situation.
This whole thing has been a
MPAT.
trap a romance trap.
Yes.
Yeah.
Parent trap.
Kind of a parent
Your
trap.
future parents.
And
they
then
have children.
You cut to Allison Pill back at home making tea. And Hartnett goes, you always do that thing. Once again, it's just a plot contrivance that's like, do they let Allison Pill go home? Would she go home? I don't know. But she's there making tea in the dark with her hand on her hip. And he starts doing his psychological read of her.
Yes.
And it reveals that he's been running it all over in his head. And the only way it makes sense is if she sold him out.
Right. There's no way he just accidentally left a receipt in a vacant house. He's so meticulous.
So here's a question for you. To the group. When Allison Pill is outside greeting them, she calls her mom and says, Lady Raven's coming. We're coming over. Get ready.
Yeah, sure.
They're outside on the lawn like a perfect suburban Leave It to Beaver family, right? With the younger brother waving, so excited to greet her. They go in, they're serving her tea or whatever. Allison Pill's super nice. She's like, the butcher? Oh, yeah, I'm scared of him. My friends and I have nightmares about him. I was like, am I going to watch it the second time and think that Allison Pill is like playing a chess game in the trap? Not that she's necessarily like in conversation with them, but that she's putting a face on and she's doing a performance. Watching it the second time, my read is that Allison Pill is relieved.
Yes, that it's not him.
Right. If Lady Raven's coming back home with him, if he got out, then
she's at least hoping against hope. She says in the conversation, like, I wasn't sure. I didn't want it to be
wrong. She wants to be proven wrong. And he says the thing to her that's like, this is so selfish of you. You didn't think about the fact that our kids aren't going to have parents now.
Yeah.
Like the thing that pisses him off the most.
You're robbing me from time for my children. Yes.
And you're robbing.
Sure, I'm a butcher.
And also, but you're robbing our children.
Yes,
our children now have to live with a murder dad.
Well, also because in that equation, he is going to kill her and kill himself.
And he's like, it's so cliched. I hate that I've been reduced to murder-suicide.
Right. But we're going to have to do it.
Yeah.
She,
the
she
detail
gets
of,
to meet the pie.
The lying.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like that story she recounts of him lying to a neighbor.
Right. Why they were late
so well. Like constructing
something?
an incredible
but
lie.
Not having to even
you didn't panic. It was so fast.
Right. Be anxious about it or anything like that. Right.
And that started with her thinking that he was having an affair.
Like if I'm going to do what she's describing, like lying to someone to get out of an obligation, I'd probably have like a lunchtime planning session with my wife of being like, is this white lie? Can we get away with this?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yes.
I think I'm going to say that, my mom, and she's like, no, that makes sense. Let's do that. Let's do that. I just don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Yeah, let's do that. Yes.
Yeah.
And instead she's like, you just basically like went 100% lie mode.
And it was
like with,
right.
Yeah. No, like the switch of,
I love how she talks about, the specific smell of the cleaning materials.
Mm-hmm.
Like it didn't smell like normal cleaning materials. It smelled like hospital cleaning materials.
Right. It wouldn't be the chemicals you were around as a fireman.
Yeah. And
There's
I was like, I got like a little chill.
Antiseptic, perhaps, about it.
Ooh, it is all very creepy. I do think there must be some people in the audience who are kind of like, the movie should be over by now, right? Like, because it has like 4 set pieces.
Yes.
Where you kind of keep thinking like, but this is the last set piece, right?
Me, this sequence, which is so good, and I think is so much, these two performances just like absolutely
I think
fucking
it's kind of lovely.
Dunking. I do too.
You know what I mean? Like it's tense and interesting. I got the heart rate alarm on my watch, which the last time that happened to me was Way of Water.
Hey.
When like my phone is like, your heart rate seems high. And I was just like, I'm so fucking locked into this movie.
Isn't that what happened to Micah Monroe when she first saw Long Legs?
Yeah. And that was so natural that they put a heart rate monitor on her.
Hey, look, I got him $25 million opening weekend.
They've been doing it at the Olympics too, where they're like, and now a heart rate monitor on the parent of this athlete. And I'm like, it's not shocking to me that they would be tense.
You know what they should do? They should bring Micah Monroe to the Olympics and put a heart rate monitor on her watching the competition.
But then reveal to her that actually Long Legs is running in the hurdles.
He'd be good at that.
He's got long legs.
Legs are long.
I've got Twitter open on my computer right now, and Olympic breakdancing is happening.
No.
Well, it's breaking.
Oh, sorry, Olympic breaking.
Yeah.
It is so.
Is it currently? Is it the Electric Boogaloo sequence section
There's
of
some Australian woman named Ray Gun I don't even think what she's doing is breakdancing. It's like she's just kind of
I'm watching her. She's basically doing the Three Stooges on the floor.
I like it though. I think it's
I like it too. I'm so
That's
proud.
what I see long legs doing.
Like, what I love
Putting
about
on
the
a
Olympics.
T-Rex song, flopping around in a nice like athletic suit.
It's just funny what has been added to the Olympics. It's all kind of like stoner kind of guy sports. It's like surfing, skateboarding, breakdancing,
sport climbing, which has been added.
Talking about Donnie Darko.
But like climbing where you're like, it's just Darko analysis. Richard Kelly is like holding up numbers. He's like, I got nothing else to do. Like the sport climbing.
We'd at least get to the trials for that.
Where you're like, oh, they're gonna climb up a wall. Like how? Okay, and then they just sort of go, they go,
it is so
like a
cool.
Spider.
Yeah,
Like,
have you watched sport climbing?
I haven't.
They're spider people.
It's pretty cool.
It's so
and
cool.
are they doing it with like any ropes or
well,
anything?
yeah, they're but
it's not free soloing yet.
No, and it's like not that tall.
It's about speed, not yeah.
So it's like, can you reach the top of the ceiling in 4 seconds? Like,
right.
absolutely.
I was going to say, this is the heart of the movie for me. This is the whole point of why he's making it, which is you're watching this movie going, oh, here's a serial killer who's created this persona of this dad he's struggling to maintain. Yes. And the longer it goes on, you're like, the dad is as honest a part of his personality, right? These are not like one is real and one is a facade. Like both are him sort of doing acts in different environments and honest reflections of who he is in different environments. And I think this whole movie is like this Allison Pill scene. You boil down to like, can you ever really know someone? Even someone you're that close to, you spend your whole life with. Is there always some degree of performance and presentation in how we interact with other people and like who you are in different environments, you know, in the different modes, and that there is a level of performance to like the person you need to be for your children, you know, which is different than who you are with your friends and all this sort of shit where they're like, is there some inherent level of like, we're always lying a little bit to serve that specific interaction or repackage ourselves in that specific way. And what's scary for her is like, I hope I'm wrong.
Right.
I hope he is not the killer. But what would scare me more? The idea that he tricked me?
Or that I thought.
There are two things that terrify her. One is
I've been living with a serial killer.
And I wouldn't be able to notice.
Had children.
I was oblivious. Right. Or that I figured it out.
Right.
That I was right. And now I have to live with the reality of what it is. And like, I thought this reveal was going to be, oh, she was working with the police. No, it's like she basically created a clue trail to be like, well, if my suspicions are wrong, then nothing will fucking come of this. She doesn't know that the concert's a trap.
No, she doesn't know. That's right. She doesn't know the concert's a trap. She just wondered. It's like she called it an anonymous tip, but even a lesser version of that. She just kind of left something out being like, if this is something, it'll lead to something. Yeah. If not, I don't have to worry about it. I'd be pretty stressed if I did that.
Yeah.
I would be kind of stressing out.
A lot.
You know? What are you laughing
going on,
at?
Marie?
What are the breakdancers doing? Okay, we're not talking about breakdancers. Anyway, the most wonderful thing though, right, I feel like is Cooper's realization of like, I actually really care about this. Kind of sad that I might be killing you and myself.
I know.
This is kind of a huge bummer for
tacky.
me. Right.
It's not the plot I wanted. And then he notices that, what is it, pie?
Yeah.
Pie.
She's like, you have to eat this pie that was either made for your daughter's birthday or your daughter made it or whatever. And he's like, okay. And she's drugged the pie.
Talk about a great sound design moment. The specificity of the sound of him rubbing his fingers along the powder on the plate and then rubbing them against his. Yeah.
And she's like, that's what you used to kidnap people,
he
right?
says, you found my kit.
Yep.
And then the camera.
They always have a kit.
Slowly kind of like cranes down and you see like a fucking Sherlock Holmes bag open with like zip ties. And
like, yeah, you left it in the car.
Yeah.
Because he's been unraveling for the last act of the movie. He's been making more mistakes.
He's been getting sloppy.
It to me is very, predictable. And that's when they tase him. That's when he takes his shirt off and they tase his ass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, shirt's been off for the whole time.
Shirt's been off for the whole time, just for me personally.
Right. He actually, when he does it,
for Marie.
When Josh called me, he said, did you notice I took my shirt off for Marie?
Yeah, don't spoil it for Marie.
Yeah, I said, oh, thank you, Josh.
Thank you. And
the police march him out in handcuffs. He steps aside to.
Well, there's the point where he
sees
sticks
his mom.
thumbs in the
yes.
guy's eyes, and
That's
I could.
true.
I,
Well, no, that's when he steals the outfit from the SWAT guy to then
no,
drive the
I
car.
thought
Or is
that
it
was,
in that moment?
That was when they take him
On the tasing? You're
it's
right.
the tasing.
Yeah,
You're right.
it's how they you think he's maybe going to get away again, and instead they tase him. And
They
he
double
sees,
tase him. Right.
Yeah.
They
that's
double
what
right.
they
One
double tase
taser,
him.
not enough.
No.
Not
No,
for
he's-
Hartnett.
He's strong.
Yeah, that guy's
He's
got
a
too
big
many-
man.
And yes, you see his mother talking to him, but then I feel like the implication is kind of Haley Mills is kind of pushing that, right?
Yeah.
Like she's sort of saying these words and he's hearing it as his mother,
Yes.
right? Because she knows the buttons to push. She's better than Lady Raven at this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then he's down, and yes, as he's leaving, he adjusts Riley's bicycle. He says bye-bye. He's loaded
She
into
comes,
the van.
runs over.
Yeah.
You're like, how's she going to react? And she hugs him tightly, like she's sad to say goodbye to her father, even though she presumably
But
has some.
she's
Like-
still sad to say goodbye to
Like
her
Lady
father.
Raven, she's letting go.
Well, yeah,
She's
and also
forgiving him.
it's
Lady Raven does have a song about forgiveness.
Yeah.
like he was a good dad to her. She's
Yeah.
going to have to live in conflict with this. And when you see him pushing up the bicycle, you're like, okay, so this is OCD tendencies, but also is it like some representation of his
him being
relationship
like,
with
Yeah.
her?
saying goodbye to my daughter.
And then
right?
M. Night's got one final fucking.
Oh, he stole a little spoke.
He stole a spoke.
He's gonna have some fun.
He's fishing out of the handcuffs. The end of the movie. He smiles. He throws his hair back. He's having fun.
Oh, and then I burst into applause. What a
love the ending.
picture.
Now-
What a picture.
We walk out. We're talking. We
And
get
there's a
some
mid-
drinks.
Did you see the mid-credit scene?
Yeah,
Yeah,
our
oh, yeah.
friend,
The
the
guy-
merch
The merch
guy.
guy.
Yeah.
That was my dude's a butcher. It's all my
Yeah.
fault.
We ran to someone we know who works in the industry and asked us to not name them because they had negative opinions on the movie.
Wait, I gotta know.
We'll tell you afterwards. But we had like a long-spirited conversation
Yes.
about this.
Yes.
And in that conversation, and there was a lot of talk about like Hartnett physically and how he's changed and how he stayed the same and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, he never had a full-grown unibrow, but at his peak of teen kind of heartthrob dumb.
Dark,
I always thought
heavy
it was,
brows. Yeah.
and there was hair in the middle, which I always thought was,
I don't.
I'm not saying this in a negative way. I'm saying it as just like it was going against the
Josh
trends of the
Hartnett
day.
Eyebrows.
In this film, his eyebrows are very well defined, and I also noticed, and I said this in the in our post-movie conversation,
I guess there's
you
a
see some-
little hair.
I know. I'm
he has the
sort of
Griffin
backing
done.
Griffin
He
up
has
here.
the Griffin done after hours. It's not a full unibrow, but he didn't shave that spot.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of brown.
It's shaved in this movie, and I also was like, wait, did he fill in the gap in the teeth? The famous Josh Hartnett gap.
right.
And then I looked back to the marketing of this movie, and the gap is still there. But they filled it in for this movie,
Yeah.
which I imagine has to be Shyamalan thinking, if this guy was this obsessed with control.
He would have maybe worked on his. That's interesting. I didn't think about that. You're right. He does, of course, have that lovely gap, but you don't really see it in Trap.
No.
No, they filled it in.
They filled
Because
it
they're-
in.
when he's in the merch scene, it looks like whatever appliance they used is not very good, and it looks like he has one long tooth at the front.
Yeah.
Later in the movie, it's delineated, but they clearly made some like porcelain
I mean,
gap filler thing.
it probably also just makes him less sort of cute.
Yeah.
You know, like a little scarier, like to not have that nice little sort of feature.
Mhm.
Yeah. Interesting. Trap. I think it's good.
Yeah.
Huge fan. I love Old a lot, so I have to sort of think about that. I think Old is so profound.
Yes, Old's my favorite of the third act. Shyamalan.
Right. And I don't have Trap there yet, but
No.
I'm excited to, keep thinking about Trap. And I
Mhm.
think it's one of his best accomplishments in a wonderful career.
It's just fun. I think he's neat.
Okay, Kevin Costner.
I was doing
Box
Marge,
office.
but
Oh,
Let's
okay.
let's do the box office.
Box office.
Quickly. August 2nd, 2024. Obviously, this is recent box office number one at the box office, Griffin.
Deadpool and Wolverine.
There they are.
Can I throw out a thought experiment?
Sure.
I've been sitting on this one. I want to get this on mic for you. It's
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
And this is with no spoilers.
Spoiler alert. Deadpool and Wolverine are there.
I'm not pitching this as a better movie. I just want everyone to run this thought experiment. in
Go
their
ahead.
head.
Go ahead.
With what that movie is trying to do with the character of Wolverine and the plot line they're trying to give him, does that movie not work narratively, emotionally better if it's Dougray Scott? This is my argument for why the story of this movie is kind of broken.
No, it does not. That's a very funny pitch. I really like that pitch. It's funny.
Of course he wouldn't give a better performance. Jackman's performance is the best argument for that movie.
Look, not.
But I also think they don't really know why we're bringing Wolverine back other than
God, I can't
people
believe I'm
want
about to disagree with
him
you and
back.
defend Deadpool and Wolverine. No, I don't think that's true. I think the point of Deadpool and Wolverine is, God, I hate that I'm defending the narrative of this fucking movie.
I've trapped you.
Yeah, the whole thing was a trap. Is Deadpool and Wolverine being like, man, we're going to be the only ones they care about from 20 plus years of these movies, huh? Like, we're going to be the only ones that get to go into the fun ones that make money.
Yeah.
Everyone else is going to get left behind. And it's kind of Deadpool being like, can I at least bring like Daphne Keane, maybe a fucking, you know, what's her pants, blind lady, you know, Leslie Uggams, you know,
sure.
Come on, Marina Baccarin, I kind of care about her. It sort of depends on where we are in the movie, but she supposedly is my love interest. And Wolverine obviously is, you know, him being like, well, I'm Deadpool being like, I'm the special one, right? And they're like, well, actually, no, Wolverine is, but he died. And he's like, well, fuck. What if I go get a shitty Wolverine?
Yeah.
And yes, your joke is like, what if it's literally Dougray Scott, right? Like a Wolverine so shitty we never got to see him.
Because they're kind of trying to have it both ways of being like, well, we want to respect the sanctity of Logan by using his corpse as a weapon, but also saying that character is dead.
I'm saying
here's just a different guy played by the same guy.
Look, I just don't care about any of it and whatever, but I actually like that it desecrates Logan.
I do too.
People take that movie too seriously, and it's a totally good movie that succeeds.
It's also a Western, but
that is true.
Yeah. That movie's whatever.
Yeah, I mean, my whole thing with Deadpool and Wolverine is that I was just like, it has that Feige slickness that I both understand the appeal of and kind of am sick of.
Simultaneously, I felt that where I'm like, this movie is kind of humming along, and I find it a little insidious.
Makes no sense, right?
Yeah, I have other takes that I can't say because they're spoilers, and I don't want to ruin shit for people. But that was my big one.
But I think most people have seen Deadpool and Wolverine if they want to at this point.
Yeah.
But that's the film. Did you see it 3 or 4 times yet, Marie? Deadpool and Wolverine.
Because you have to go to different theaters to get the different buckets.
Exactly.
Baby
I've been
pool
collecting
bucket,
all of the different
head
buckets.
bucket.
My friend
Wolverine
my friend
blowjob
Rachel
bucket.
was like, my brother wants the bucket. I was like,
Yeah,
throwing it at her. I was like, take this
they
away
gave
from
you
me.
the bucket.
Oh, yeah.
I
We all got a bucket.
I wasn't interested in seeing the film, but then I was really swayed by the gay panic marketing campaign there. I was like, you know what? I really have to see this movie.
Hey, it's this line they tow. It's a movie. Well, whatever. Where I can't even get into this.
They also showed it to be an IMAX, and I was like, guys, showing it to be an IMAX is not going to, like, you know, you can't just sprinkle gold on the movie like that.
I'd love to
it's not
see
going to help.
a perfect Levy composition in this.
I'll say this about Sean Levy. So this is the
seems like a nice guy
episode where I talk about people I've interviewed. I interviewed him once for a big story I did about Netflix, and my kid was homesick. She was napping, and I was like, I think I'm going to get this interview in before she wakes up. She woke up during the interview, and I had to get her out, and she was yelling and then running around and stuff. And he was incredibly nice about it and was like, I have kids. I know what's going on. Do not worry about it at all. And I always thought he was cool.
I have never heard anything less than glowing about him as a person, and not just like he's performatively nice. Like that guy's actually got character.
Seemed all right.
I don't really care for him.
And he's
movies.
Canadian.
Yeah.
You know, Canadians. Yeah. Number 2 at the box office, Twisters. I'm just saying it.
Yeah.
Did you see Twisters, Ben?
I did.
Cool.
My friend Rebecca, her husband is Harry the British guy in the film. So I was really rooting for him.
Wait, that guy fucking rocks. I saw him on Broadway in My Fair Lady. He was insanely good.
Yeah.
Cool.
I loved the film.
I mean, he's fun in Twisters too.
Yeah, he's really fun in Twisters.
I thought it was just like a silly, fun movie.
Oh, I had a great time.
Yeah.
This was the thing that I think I had loath to acknowledge them. The
Tornadoes?
Blanky's subreddit brought to my attention. Twisters
Those scoundrels
has weirdly, I don't even want to say collapsed, like is a non-starter at the overseas box office.
Yeah,
it's done poorly overseas.
Every single market. And people are pointing at like, well, it's an Americana movie. Glenn Powell isn't really known over there yet. And I think the more interesting thing is that movie has the same distribution split that the original Twister had, because that was a very big production at the time, where it was Warner Brothers and Universal together.
Half and half.
And Universal gets domestic, and Warner Brothers gets the rest of the world on this one. And a lot of our international listeners were saying, you guys are overanalyzing this. This movie was not marketed in this country. I saw no trailers. There are no posters. Warner Brothers seems to just be shitting the bed. And you look at Warner Brothers Summer at a time where they just took a massive write-off.
And you see only success.
Wait, what? Didn't they like just announce that they were like, they miscalculated their Q2 revenue by like $9 billion or something?
it's truly them being like, oh, we're actually worth a lot less money than we said we were.
But here's what their summer has been. Furiosa, sadly, just a total flop.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Horizon, weird output deal. Like, we didn't make this movie. It's a negative pickup.
I don't think they're taking a bath, but yeah.
Trap, same fucking deal.
Right. Also not really their project in the same way.
Twisters is like a Universal movie that Warner Brothers was baked into the contract on and seemingly just dropped the ball in every other country.
It's true. It's made less than half of its domestic take. Its domestic take is very strong.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's weird.
They've the movies they're releasing aren't even movies they make anymore, and they're fucking those up.
And Twister 1, to be clear, made like tons of money overseas.
Yes.
And is also a movie about tornadoes in Oklahoma. Like, it's not like...
Yeah, I did some, cursory tornado research.
Yeah.
After Twisters.
Sure.
They do exist in other countries.
It is not...
but not it's
as
nothing
big.
like America.
But
no.
they have tornadoes in Bangladesh.
Yes,
Sure.
they do. They do. They have tornadoes in other places, but there's nothing like... It's so weird to me, and respect to the people who live in Tornado Alley, that there's just a part of America where they're like, yeah, it's just kind of where they love to be, is tornadoes right here.
But there's this weird thing of people, like, it's not like, oh, this movie is underperforming overseas relative to here, where it's doing really fucking well here, and it's holding.
Yep. It is. It's holding amazing.
It is a fully formed hit.
Is it Brat?
Is
Yes.
Twisters Brat?
Yes.
No.
Are tornadoes, Brad?
Our tornadoes
are Brat.
They really are, because they truly show up, make a lot of drama, and then vanish.
Yeah, no, but Twisters, it's a little too Heartland America.
Sure, folksy.
Folksy.
Yeah,
It's
sure,
a little
sure,
too folksy to be Brat.
But yeah,
Was
like,
that lady from ER?
Maura Tierney? Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
and a role that definitely wasn't written for Helen Hunt. Definitely wasn't.
But Helen Hunt wanted to write and direct
Correct.
her own sequel to Twisters.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
God
they
bless.
instead picked a different cast member of Hamilton. She was going to do it with Daveed Diggs.
Right.
Yes.
I just love things I loved about Twisters. One, that Maura Tierney shows up. Two, my headcanon that Glenn Powell fucked Maura Tierney when he was hanging out at her house.
I was about to say.
Yeah.
I saw
Kinda
a
feels
tweet.
Someone
like
should fuck in that
I saw
movie.
a tweet that was like, people are like, why didn't they kiss at the end? Because Glenn
like, 'cause he's
fucked
gonna-
her mom.
Right. That's a line he
All
doesn't
over
cross.
the fucking barnyard.
One per
And-
family for Glenn.
3, I just love that it's like, Glenn Powell plays the square-jawed American storm
Yeah.
chaser guy, but then his whole crew is like Bushwick. Like it's just like this bunch of
He's
like
American
crunchy
Honey.
fun guys.
Yeah.
American Honey and the guy from TV on the radio.
guy, loved him.
Brandon Perea,
Right,
all those guys. Like,
My one criticism of the movie, which I did really enjoy, is I think Anthony Ramos sucks.
he's not. Look,
I like him, and I think that is not the right fit for him, that part.
What is that role where he's
Yeah.
like, well, I wear a polo shirt and I'm boring about tornadoes. Like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, but even like corn sweat pops.
He does. I saw that guy in that movie and I was like, I am pumped to see this guy play Superman. This guy looks like
Funny
Superman.
that this guy went from playing like kind of like square-jawed creeps and assholes, and now we're like, can you be the embodiment?
Yeah,
I think he's going to be good.
I think he's going to be good.
Scary in Pearl.
Yeah.
He's an asshole in Twisters.
He's
Mhm.
good in Twisters.
He's very weird in Apple TV Plus's Lady on the Lake.
Okay.
Oh, I should check that out.
He certainly has the look, but I saw someone say, like, is the movie not better if you swap Ramos and Corn Sweat in their roles? And it probably is.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But anyway, number 3 at the box office, Trap. Griffin. Trap. Film we just discussed.
Yeah.
Number 4, an animated film.
And I will say, I think one of the only movies I will give credit to Warner Brothers for actually promoting correctly, releasing correctly
Trap
in
had
the summer,
great
them
marketing.
fucking it up.
DeLuca told me
Yeah.
when Knight pitches you a script,
Right.
and or whatever, the next project, he's like, let's start talking marketing right away.
Yeah, makes
like
sense.
it's like they're immediately
part of the package.
Yes, it's all part of the package.
Yeah.
He wants audiences to see it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Number 4,
Number 4 at the box
Animated film.
office, is it
Inside
still
Out
Inside
2?
Out, or is it Despicable Me 4?
Despicable Me 4 is number 4, and Inside Out 2 is number 5. And weirdly, the best film of the year, Harold and the Purple Crayon, opened at number 6.
What is that?
Well, you know
What
that delightful
isn't it?
children's book about a boy with a magic crayon who draws things
Remember
and they
that?
come to
It's
life?
a classic book about
I
like a
loved it.
baby in a onesie who's got a purple crayon
Right.
and he can like draw imaginary
But they
friends.
made Harold, they made the baby Zachary.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Who do you love the most? Zachary Levi. Who do you want to have the
I don't
power
know
of
if
the
I
purple
do.
crayon? No, what do you mean? Yes, you do.
And it's
Okay.
sort of
And you want to go on a cruise with him and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to talk about
and
that.
he's not even mad because it's actually funny because it's a perfect family film.
I'm not
and
joking.
I'm so late for dinner.
That is a cruise you can go on right now.
Yeah,
it's like,
it's also like Adriana from The Sopranos.
Yeah, and Meta World
Someone
Peace.
with a Substack.
Someone with a
Are you allowed to wear a mask on it?
Oh, sure.
I think that film
You want
was.
to get thrown overboard.
I think that film was shot in the year 2020.
It's been much delayed.
Yes.
It's certainly, as someone who maintains the Atlantic's internal movie schedule spreadsheet, like just so we can keep, I kept putting it in and then I would see like, oh, I guess they kicked it another year. All right, I'll take it off.
Right.
Like it's been around for a while.
And they're basically just doing the elf thing of like weird character escapes from like storybook reality. Like the idea is that like he was the character in the book and then he grew up into a man and then he left the book. And now he's in the world, down to Zoe Deschanel playing the same role she played in fucking Elf 20 years ago.
That's a bummer that she's in it.
Where she's like retail worker and this weird man-child comes in, starts acting strange, and she's like, what's your deal? It's a bummer.
And she
that
fucks him. She fucks the baby man.
I have heard that thankfully she does not fuck the baby man. That it does not become a romantic
that never
relationship.
sat right with me.
In Elf, it feels a little bit like there is a
There's
bump up
a
against a
blurry
little bit.
line there
Yeah.
that maybe the movie should think about harder.
it's a bit of a big situation.
Anyway, number 7, the second freakiest movie of the year, Longlegs, after Harold and the Purple Crayon, which has, made $70 million at the time of recording. Number 8, A Quiet Place Day One, a very robust little
super
hit.
solid movie.
That I thought, was a pretty good movie.
Yeah.
Number 9 is something called The Firing Squad. What the heck
Is Inside Out out of
this?
the top 10, or did you
No,
say it
it's
already?
number
Oh, yeah.
5.
It was after Despicable Me.
It is currently the 10th highest grossing film of all time.
Yeah.
It sure is.
And it still has legs. Maybe they're not long, but it's still got some gas in the tank. It is
and I've heard Longlegs will be one of the emotions in Inside Out 3.
Well, of course, one of the core emotions we all conjure up on a daily basis.
Just doing that in the background.
I think Longlegs is funny.
You gotta let me come in.
I like him. I think he's a
funny.
good guy.
I also think it's funny when they're like, all right, Longlegs, why'd you do all this shit? And he's like, like it's just, and people are like, oh, this is stupid and not scary. And I'm like, I don't know, he kind of rocks.
This is the thing Oz Perkins said on Big Picture, where he was just like, I think
guy
these
is
guys are
dumb.
dweebs. I think we mythologize serial killers to try to make them interesting, and they're usually just weird loners who get hung up on dumb shit like T-Rex.
Inside Out 2,
T-Rex is good.
number 10 is Bad Boys Ride or Die, another fairly robust hit and fun movie of the summer.
How much hand bringing there was throughout all of May. You look at the top 10 now and you're like, there are like 8 different movies performing very well in different genres for different audiences. Like everyone's now fucking calm.
Yes. It truly just took Inside Out 2 doing so well that people are like, well, I guess people like to go to movies, and I guess all my worries of the last month are disproven by this.
And I'm like, a year earlier we had
it was like a
Barbenheimer.
spell broke, yeah.
And a year before that we had Top Gun Maverick. And 6 months before that we had Spider-Man No Way Home.
Right.
And it feels like every 6 months people go like, but they might have actually left theaters for good this time. They're never coming back. It's like we've had several of the highest grossing movies in history released post-lockdown.
And now Deadpool and Wolverine's another one. It's basically already at $1 billion. But despite being, and I say this fondly, a stupid movie for dumbasses.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, right? Like it's cost a lot of money and it's got a lot of
baby-brain
people
bullshit.
making an effort, but at the same time, you know, the whole point of Deadpool is him going like, you know, like that is what it is.
Yeah, it's a movie that basically starts with him being like, now obviously this doesn't matter.
Right. 100%.
Right.
So that's the box office.
Can I say one final thing?
You sure can.
Ben, we talked about some great moments of Ben witnessing a trailer for the first time on the show.
Fuck yeah.
Like Spies in Disguise.
I knew this was going to happen.
Right?
Yes.
A trailer comes up last night and Ben sees animated Lego men and he turns to me and gets excited. Oh, the Lego movies. Those are fun. You had a bit of a smile just at the reveal of it is a Lego movie.
Yeah.
And I said, Ben, stay focused. I want you to figure out what this is.
Don't look away from this trailer.
Yeah, I want you to really try to lock into what is this movie. And of course, it was Piece by Piece, the animated documentary about Pharrell Williams, directed by Morgan Neville.
It was a documentary.
Morgan Neville is very firm on it being a traditional documentary that fulfills all of the benchmarks of that as a format.
And I was so confused because I was like, oh, Michel Gondry is making a Pharrell biopic.
Universal seemingly has some Pharrell deal where they're working on multiple things with them, But one of them is Michel Gondry is making like a fictionalized version of his childhood as a musical movie with a good cast.
But also, like, Michel Gondry famously made an iconic music video with Legos.
Right.
But he's not making the Lego movie.
Morgan Neville,
the documentarian.
Right. Filmed
not a man known for whimsy.
Filmed a bunch of interviews with Pharrell and other people and then animated them in Lego format. Now, people are like, what is this? How is this real? How did this come into being? And I just want to very quickly establish, because I think it's the kind of thing our listeners love. Warner Brothers has their Lego movies, right? People go, how are you going to make a fucking movie out of Lego? Toy movies, that'll never work. First Lego movie, humongous. Lego Batman, big. Then big drop off on Ninjago. It was like they went to the well too many times too quickly. But they've been taking the time to get Lego Movie Part 2 right. They're waiting for that one. That will reset the train. That comes out, underperforms wildly. Huge drop off.
Made enough money, but not much. Yeah.
Warner Brothers is at the end of their film agreement with Lego. And they're like, you know what? We're choosing not to renew. We had 3 or 4 more Lego movies in development. At one point in time, we thought Lego was going to be as robust as DC. We could be releasing 2 different Lego movies every year. Maybe we got too big for our britches. Let it go. So then there's like a competitive auction for who gets the Lego movie rights.
Yes.
Universal's like, we need this.
You have done this rant before, Griffin, I will say.
I need to bring it back into focus in relation to piece by piece.
Okay.
Universal gets it, and they're like, great, let's get to work making Lego movies. So part 3, Emmett and Wildstyle, Unikitty, and they're like, oh, no. Warner Brothers owns all of those characters.
Right.
And they're like, wait, so what did we just buy in the auction? And they were like, the ability to make movies in the medium of Lego.
Hey, not nothing.
And nothing else. So Universal has spent 6 years trying to go, well, how do we make shit that's different than what Warner Brothers made? Because we don't have those characters. We can't continue any of them.
Voldemort can't be in your movie.
Right, all of that. So we need to define what's our Lego movie. At various times, we have heard pitches that didn't go of like, a live-action movie with one Lego CGI character who is 5 feet tall and interacts with the real world. Harold and the Purple Crayon style. I'll remind you of that later.
Okay.
Like shit like that. They keep on trying. They can't fucking square it. They're like 6 years in. This deal's about to run out. They clearly just threw a Hail Mary pass and they went like, Pharrell, would you want to do a documentary in Lego?
You think that's
so
how
we
it
just
went
fulfill
down?
the obligation.
I don't
It
know
feels like a Battleship deal where they had to do something.
I don't know if Pharrell pitched it or they were like, yeah, sure. But what if it was Lego? I would love to know.
They had just spent 6 years making nothing after spending a lot of money. And it's clear that at some point someone was like, we need to figure out some way to turn something into Lego.
Well, I think it's going to work.
Yeah, Ben was crying by the end of the trailer.
Yeah, I'm not convinced it's going to be a good film.
Snoop Dogg turns into a dog.
But
He's
we'll
a Lego
see.
Snoop Dogg, and then the chair spins around and he turns into a dog.
Anything can happen.
It's kind of cool to see Legos rocking fits.
Sure.
Trap good.
Trap good. Trap fun.
I'm glad we all enjoyed Trap.
And look forward to talking about another M. Night Shyamalan movie in 18 months. I expect you all to be normal about this episode. Next week,
Great question.
Horizon Part 1.
Horizon Part 1, an American Saga,
A very
Chapter
normal
1.
episode.
Yeah, an episode that was recorded at a time when we thought Horizon Part 2 would be coming soon.
But hey, it's going to be at Venice, which means it exists, and we will have it someday.
I am trying to
Get your ass to Venice.
I'm in a movie that's playing at Venice.
Yeah, I mean,
sure
like
are.
Kevin Costner.
And it's the
You are
one
in a
place
movie that's
I can
playing
be
at Venice.
guaranteed to see Horizon Part 2. So I don't know. Stay tuned for that. I may or may not go to Venice if whatever.
I think you should. I think you'd be so cute on a little speedboat, Griffin. Would they let you go on the speedboat? Does everyone get to go on the boats?
I am just trying to figure out the logistics. I'm trying to figure out if it's possible to get all the ducks in a row a month out to do this. But we'll see. I'm trying. Maybe I'll be reporting live from the Lido, having walked out of 6 straight hours of Horizon. You know they're screening them back to back.
I know.
Yeah.
I know because that's the only way it makes sense.
He's not just showing Part 2. He's like, no, you need to see the whole thing.
Wow.
Thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Hey, thanks to
Marie Barty for social media and for helping to produce the show.
Thanks to
Me, Ben Hosley, for producing the show.
And you're editing this episode. Because it's a fast turnaround.
Quick
one.
turnaround.
It's a quick turnaround one.
And the editor is on vacation.
Yeah. But he's also our production coordinator, AJ McKean.
Boom.
Thank you to Joe Bone and Pat Reynolds for our artwork, Leigh Montgomery and the Great American Owl for our theme song, Lady Raven for the soundtrack to our hearts.
No thank you to JJ this week because new releases don't have dossiers.
Yeah. JJ is now floating the theory that Zaslav is pulling movies off the schedule because he doesn't like episodes where JJ can't prepare a dossier. He texted that today at the news of the Genndy Tartakovsky movie getting shelved. It's fun. It's a good time in the film industry. Mm-hmm. Go to blankcheckpod.com for links to some real nerdy shit, including our Patreon Blank Check special features where we're doing tabletop games, including the recently mentioned Battleship, a movie that comes out of another bad deal that Universal made. David can't find the forks. And as always, we just want to remind you that he is the most normal member of the podcast.
Normal.
The most
normal
normal guy to ever live.